Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1428 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news. We've heard that Ukraine has struck some Russian ports and also a major thermal power plant this evening inside of Russia. We've also seen that Iran is urgently mobilizing its military forces, and also the U.S. forces are now panicking to contain the terror groups that are getting loose inside of Syria as that situation goes out of control. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as significant developments have emerged from inside the Middle East as well as Eastern Europe over the past 24 hours, which have been of significant news and notoriety, as we have heard that the Ukrainian armed forces have conducted another nightly drone attack onto the Russian Federation, and the Ukrainian armed forces have already been able to land significant hits into the area of the port of Taman, slamming major oil derricks and also the oil loading facilities on shore, and knocking out the largest oil loading facility within the entirety of the area of the Black Sea. Additionally, we have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation has taken other additional hits, once again within occupied territories, and satellite and picture evidence is once again also showing us that the ammunition fire and explosion at Debaltseve was one, geolocated inaccurately by our channel yesterday, and instead of the Russian Federation using the much safer storage location at the outskirts of the city, which has direct railhead access, the ammunition depot was actually right here, directly within the middle of a neighborhood. It appears that the explosion not only destroyed a large amount of this ammunition dump, but also caused significant or irreparable damage to a larger amount of the houses directly along the perimeter of that area. We have also been able to hear of other major news that's been going on elsewhere outside of Ukraine, as the Islamic Republic of Iran is still mobilizing armed forces throughout the country to violently put down ongoing protests and revolutions that are still ongoing inside of Tehran, but have largely been suppressed elsewhere. The Iranian official statement is that around 3,200 Iranians were killed within the conflicts that we're seeing over the past past few weeks, as the United States president is now openly saying that there isn't really any reason for the United States to bomb Iran. However, U.S. force deployments into the region are still ongoing, and we've also seen that the state of Israel is continuing to believe that further strikes by the United States of America are most likely anticipated against the Iranians within the next several days. Although, once again, we don't really know if the Israelis are accurate with that information, but we are going to be taking them at face value at least at this point. We have also been able to see that inside of Syria, the situation is still continuing to devolve, as an ISIS flag was now raised over the city of Raqqa just earlier today, showing that the Jolani regime is incredibly sympathetic, if not aligned with ISIS forces within the area, and is allowing them to largely take control of the city of Raqqa, which was the largest one within the area of northeastern Syria. We have also been able to see, additionally, that U.S. armed forces are still moving into the area, and that there have been significant patrols within the area of the Gulf, with a large amount of tankers being present. Meanwhile, we have also seen, moving us back up into Europe, that the Ukrainian armed forces have held their lines over the course of the day and have inflicted significant casualties onto the Russian Federation's armed forces over the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, we have also seen that within the Davos summit, the United States is now completely, or more so the President of the United States, has now completely backed off of the idea of militarily annexing Greenland, as it apparently appeared that after meeting with some European leaders in Davos, it became clear that they were not playing around. And so the President completely changed his tone, and we're now hearing that a great deal has been made to where the U.S. will be allowed to enter Greenland, which will still be administered and controlled by the Kingdom of Denmark as an overseas territory, and U.S. forces will be allowed through the Danish benevolence to be able to operate within the area and be able to operate key bases within the territory. Basically, the situation that we've seen for the past 70 years. Great job on negotiating that one. We have also been able to see that a flying Dorito was spotted near to the area of Area 51 earlier today, which is believed to be a myriad of different sorts of airframes, possibly the F-47 or another form of an unmanned craft. We have also seen other statements made by the United States of America out of Washington today, letting us know a little bit more about their foreign policy prerogatives and what they are planning on doing here in the future. But we are, of course, going to be getting on into all of the news tonight, starting with our largest stories first and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And of course, folks, we are going to be moving on and immediately into the area of Russia, as the Ukrainian armed forces were able to land what can only be described as a major and significant blow to the Russian Federation and its oil loading and oil transportation capabilities once again last night. Moving us on into the area of the port of Taman, we have been able to see that the Russian Federation's port has taken significant hits. The port of Taman is the largest oil loading port within the area of the Black Sea, and there are about 3 oil loading ports within this area. The port of Taman, which you can see right here with all of its oil loading derricks, which are actually so long that they actually are blurred out by satellite photography, as the open sea is actually has a bit of a filter put on it, and it actually doesn't show the actual sea itself. We also know of the port of Novorossiysk, which also has a fairly large oil loading port within it, and also the port of Tuapse, which is incredibly close to the city of Sochi, just a little bit further south, and this also has an oil loading derrick added as well. All 3 of these have been used heavily by the Russian Federation within the earlier years of the war to allow for shadow tankers to arrive at the port, load up with oil, and then transport that to Turkey, India, or China, completely circumventing U.S. and European sanctions, and also allowing for the Russian Federation to continue to keep its major economic monoliths, the oil companies, afloat, which also in turn provide tax money to the Russian government, which allows for the Russian Federation to have an existing tax base to be able to finance their war off of. The Ukrainians did hit this port overnight, and we were able to see some video evidence showing us the ongoing attack and the impacts at the port of Taman. Here is one of the clips that we had showing that attack. We can see air defense fire off in the distance, a large amount of what appears to be some sort of light machine gun or heavy machine gun fire directed upwards near the port of Taman. And
I can hear some sort of howling sound out there too.
Oh, looks like there was an explosion as well. That howling sound, Matthew, that you're hearing is someone who just got their next hit of crocodile and they're going, yeah! Like that's what you're hearing.
Yeah, they're howling at the explosions, I guess you could say. Nighttime werewolf.
Actually, no, I'm sorry, Matthew. That's not a Russian getting a hit of crocodile. That's actually Jolani's guys all the way down in Syria. And you can hear them go, like from thousands of miles away, you can hear them. They're screaming so loudly. They're screaming so loudly they have prisoners running back into prison. But anyways, it does appear that the port did take a fairly significant hit, or several from what we were able to hear, as it does appear that according to all accounts, everything is showing us, at least generally at this point, this is a blurred out picture from the port of Taman, that it was hit quite badly. We don't know exactly what was hit yet, and there's a load of stuff that could have been targeted and hit within the area of this port, so let me try and break down the list of potential targets out of this facility that could have been hit overnight. One thing that we definitely could have seen hit was this oil pumping station, which you can see right here. They also handle other forms of aggregates here as well, but primarily oil is the main trade of the port of Taman. We also understand that there is this coal loading area over here, and while this wouldn't seem like that big of a target to hit, this actually would be a pretty big target to hit in terms of the collateral that it would cause, as putting out coal-based fires is somewhat challenging, as a matter of fact. Once coal begins to burn, it usually burns at a high enough temperature, around 900 to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, that it is pretty hard to put the stuff out. So if they were able to start a coal fire, which is a little unlikely to start, but if they were able to start one, this would be a bit of a major issue that they would be having to deal with. They could have also hit these fuel tanks over here, or any of the loading facilities that are used by the Russian railways to load oil into the area to then be transported by ship. They could have also hit the major rail yards up here, which generally are carrying coal hoppers, and that's about it. But there are a decent amount of targets that they could have hit within this area that would have caused critical damage to the port facilities and its operations, and have largely stopped most of anything from being conducted here at the port. We can confirm from that picture, although it's heavily pixelated, that this thing has been knocked out for the moment, and while the Russian Federation is trying to effect repairs, this once again means that their oil transportation capabilities out of the Black Sea are once again being heavily reduced, with only oil mostly being transported out of the port of Novorossiysk in fairly limited amounts, and out of Jawabs in basically the drop loads by the day, not an incredibly large amount at all, as we understand that the Jawabs port has been at an incredibly low efficiency ever since it was hit critically earlier last year. This is, once again, another major impact to the Russian economy and the Russian Federation's war machine. The Russian Federation relies on the money that they get from their oil shipments to be able to keep the war running and to be able to keep their economy rolling. The Russian economy is a monolith, meaning that the health of their economy exists on a single industrial base. Their industrial base being that of resource extraction, particularly that of petroleum and natural gas. If any of the companies like Lukoil or Gazprom or any of the others start to collapse, Russia is losing out on a humongous amount of tax revenue that they can use to fund their war effort. Not only that, they're looking at tons of people in the Russian Federation, by the hundreds of thousands, if not the millions at that point, becoming unemployed because these companies would go under. Once those people are unemployed, they then have to draw from the Russian government's bank accounts to get their social welfare benefits, which they're entitled under Russian law. If they don't get those, they'll riot. If they get them, they're then draining the Russians' remaining tax dollars that they have in their treasuries at the moment and sucking the Russian government dry. Not only that, they will also not be able to afford any apartments, they won't be able to afford any food, and all of the companies that are involved in real estate, grocers, and such will also start to go under because they're not making any profits at that point because nobody in the Russian Federation can afford to buy anything at all. So, we are once again seeing that the Ukrainians are trying to put the maximum amount of pressure possible, especially on Russia's economic abilities and institutions, like the oil industries, to be able to try and grind the Russian sort of an ongoing war effort. But with that in mind, we also have been able to see that other major attacks happen within the Russian Federation's occupied areas of Ukraine overnight. And moving us on up into the area of Starobasheve, we also got to see that there was some form of an attack on this city as well. This is a smaller city within the Donetsk Oblast, and we don't know exactly what was hit within this area. It may have been an ammunition depot once more, but here's the clip showing one of the hits. We see a flashing going on over the side of the building here. And it seems like it might be some sort of an ongoing ammunition fire. We also were able to see this clip as well, which showed us the air defense over the city, and also some impacts as well. Here's that clip.
Also, Andrew, it looks like we're having audio issues on your end. The audio is not being picked up.
I think that might be a YouTube server issue because OBS says that it's loading fine and it's picking up audio fine. So I think that might be a YouTube server issue because on my end, everything is running perfectly fine. So
all we can tell folks is to refresh your screen, like refresh your YouTube tab. That maybe that'll fix it. Perhaps we're really not sure what that problem is.
I mean, like, the computer's been updated. Everything has been run through today. I did as much system checks as I could. That's probably a YouTube server issue, which is generally out of my control, folks, unfortunately. So, sitting around and talking about that much more won't really, unfortunately, do us any good. So, if you refresh, that might fix it. So, with that, here's this next clip.
Ману я серому снимаю.
We see the air defense firing into the skies, and we can also hear the drones coming in as well. Ooh, and there's the direct impact.
Obliat.
Твою мать, нехай, блядь. Извиняюсь. Что-то плохо не сбивали.
We see the air defense fire is now stopped, and the area is getting a deathly calm over it after the direct impact from the drone.
Вроде не видно, чтобы горело, может, сбили.
And that's the end of that clip, but still showing us at the moment that the city of Starbashevo has come under a significant attack from Ukrainian drone forces, and we're still trying to ascertain exactly what has happened within the area and what kind of damage has been caused. There are a decent amount of facilities that could have been hit, and some people have been apt enough to already geolocate some of the possible locations within the city that have been hit, but from the first video that we showed in the first 6 seconds where we heard that loud hissing sound, we would assume that it's some form of solid propellant or ammunition that has been hit at another ammunition storage depot within the interior of the city, which once again means that another Russian ammunition depot has been targeted and hit directly by the Ukrainian armed forces, which will once again be greatly decreasing the Russian Federation's combat abilities for their group armies around the area of Pokrovsk and also around the area of Konstantinivka. We also have been able to see, folks, a follow-up from the situation in Debaltseve. And it appears that our geolocation on stream yesterday, specifically my geolocation on stream, was actually incorrect, because I gave the Russians the benefit of the doubt, which is a major failing in mine from yesterday, that I would ever think that they would be concerned about public safety. In Debaltseve yesterday, a Ukrainian drone attack was conducted that hit an ammunition depot, which caused a major explosion and what appeared to be the critical loss of the ammunition dump. We went through the area the other day on stream, and there were 2 locations that I said that this ammunition dump could be. Either here within the central area of the city, somewhere around here. I said that that was unlikely because it was very close to a population area, and that would lead to less control over the ammunition depot. And also on top of that, that would lead to this area being at significant risk of causing civilian casualties if it was hit. So then I said that the other highly likely option was this facility out here, which appears to be some sort of an old lumber camp of some sort, but it has large buildings with wide open spaces inside of them, or at least some spaces inside of them that would be allowed to be used for the storage of ammunition, and direct road access to what appeared to be some sort of a railway platform to where the Russians could roll up boxcars loaded with ammunition or other forms of rail cars and simply offload the ammunition there and take about the half-mile drive to this facility, which seemed a lot more efficient and also a lot safer to the general public. It turns out I was completely wrong. In the first place that I stated on air that was highly unlikely that they put it was actually where they put it. They put it in this building right here. Very similar to the logging shacks that we saw outside of the town, but right next to neighborhoods. So this ammunition dump was in what appears to be a fairly easily near to the railhead, but also on top of that, it's literally within the area of civilian residences. The closest occupied building that we can see on the map was literally 147 feet away from the north wall of the ammo depot, meaning that any explosion would directly have an impact on the surrounding houses and neighborhoods within this area of the town of Debaltseve. We got satellite footage today showing us the damage, and here it is. This is the exact building that was being used for the ammo dump. And this is what it looks like today.
Holy cow. Jeez, man. It obviously took out the building where the ammo was being stored, but did it do something to the surrounding neighborhood? Like, why does it look like a nuclear bomb hit?
We think that it may have largely damaged most of that area of the neighborhood just directly north, and it also looks like it completely wiped out that larger building that was off to the east of it right here as well. The damage has been extreme. It looks like the entire area around the ammo dump has been deforested from the explosion, and it largely looks like a moonscape with hundreds of little craters, which y'all can kind of see them a little bit. The satellite photography here is very grainy, but You can see the hundreds of craters caused by the ammunition shells that were flung out of the building and then immediately detonated on impact with the ground, or other forms of explosives that were detonating around the area. And we can also see an incredibly large crater in the middle of where that shed used to be that is now completely disintegrated and most likely turned into atoms from the explosion. So quite a hell of a outcome, at least in that situation. And it also seems as though at the moment that the Russian Federation once again prioritized convenience over everything else, because there are a load of issues, folks, with this storage facility. For one, it's incredibly close to civilian populaces. Two, the place was not cleared out at all. Even the satellite photography from the day before, this is it, the area is surrounded by trees. That means that people could be lurking around this ammo dump quite literally anywhere and everywhere, and a partisan could have run up on this thing and set alight if it wasn't a Ukrainian drone attack that did it. And I'll be entirely honest with y'all, that's probably the reason why this place was targeted, is because Ukrainian partisans were able to see a large amount of Russian logistics activity around that building and basically called it into the Ukrainian GRU, which then ended up slamming the place yesterday and knocking it completely out. Not only that, it's also near, while I had a voice crack there that was unlike any
I wasn't
other.
gonna say nothing, but that was a doozy there.
Man, and now you're coming through clear. I mean, it's crazy, man. Like, you're like, man.
And all it took was a voice crack. That's what fixed the whole situation. One voice crack, it got me talking clear as a bell.
You know, Matthew, at the beginning of every stream now, just to make sure that your audio comes through clearly, I'm going to go bippity boppity boo, like, and it'll probably come through just fine after that. But anyways, the main thing though, folks, is that ammunition depots are always supposed to be built with some sort of a layer of safety around them, to where people can't be injured or killed in the general public if something goes wrong. These people were 140 feet away. If something goes wrong, they're probably going to be wounded or killed. In America, just to show y'all the comparison here, let me show y'all a very good comparison, which would be the Anniston Army Depot. This is how we store ammunition. Every single one of these buildings is a hardened shelter, several hundred feet apart from each other. I believe the average distance is about 500 feet or so from center to center. And actually is, believe it or not. And on top of that, another thing is that they're well away from any residential areas. Like, for example, here, the closest building to one of these ammunition storage bunkers is about a good 2,268 feet away, or a half mile away. Meaning that if any one of these bunkers here had some sort of a critical failure, the nearest residential area is a half mile away. Meaning that while they'll be incredibly scared by anything that goes wrong, they won't be in direct harm's way. Much different than the Russians, who will store ammo literally 140 feet away from a residential building, and we would assume that there were, unfortunately, civilian casualties that most likely have been racked up within the area around that ammo depot within Debaltseve last night. And once again, giving us an incredibly good reason to know that the Russian army is wildly incompetent. Not only that, they're incredibly inept, and they have absolutely no safety procedures whatsoever to protect themselves or the general public at large from their own stupidity and incompetence. Still, it does appear that one insignificant one, other Ukrainian drones are still making their way into the Russian Federation right now, and are attempting to hit a wide variety of targets throughout the entirety of the area. A lot of people are starting to understand that this war looks a lot like it did last year, this year. And while the Russian Federation is still chugging on, at least at the moment, nobody really knows what the Russians' grand battle plan or grand strategy at this point is inside of Ukraine. No matter how many losses they take on the front, they hardly gain any ground, especially hardly any ground compared to the amount of losses that they're taking per each square mile of ground that they eventually take. Not only that, their economy is collapsing week over week and month over month, and that can't go on indefinitely. And there is a eventual point that they're going to reach the bottom of what the Russian economy is capable of handling. On top of that, the Russian Federation still is not willing to accept, compromise, or negotiate on any sort of a peace deal at all, even at the beginning of this year. And this has led a lot of people to wonder, what is the grand Russian battle plan for the next year, now that stagnation in every form, including basically backslides inside of the Russian economy, is starting to set in quite firmly. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? What are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so that is the question. What is Russians' plan at this point? Because the war is stagnated. Like, there is no question about that. The frontline situation is a complete stagnant situation. Right now, they're having really bad winter conditions, and neither side is making very much progress either way. And we're seeing that it's a bit of a tit-for-tat situation. Ukraine will take one small village, Russia will take a small village, and it kind of balances things out over the last few months. So what is Putin planning to do? Because his country is slowly getting torn apart and basically demolished at this point because of the economy issues he's having. So what is he going to do? 63% said Putin will continue the meat grinder battles and it'll stay just like that, while 20% said it's to convince the United States to abandon Ukraine, that's his goal, and 12% said it's to freeze the Ukrainians into surrender. And I would say personally, the odds of being able to convince the United States to abandon Ukraine, there's still decent odds of that because the U.S. flip-flops quite a bit on foreign policy, but it won't have that big of an impact to actually hurt Ukraine enough to force them to surrender. Because right now, Europe has picked up the reins, and they are helping Ukraine a lot. And I mean a lot more than the United States at this point. And the U.S. doesn't have the leverage they used to have. So that's not really a huge threat. Also, freezing the Ukrainians into surrender, we are seeing that Europe is responding to that as well. They're sending boilers. They're sending all kinds of things to help heat the Ukrainian civilians back up again, so that way they don't go into hypothermia in their apartments and freeze to death. So that's not big of a concern either. So honestly, truthfully, the only strategy here, the only plan that we could possibly deduce out of the madness is Putin plans to keep recruiting more and more Russian civilians into the military and basically throwing them into the meat grinder and right to their death. That is the plan, and that's obviously not a good plan. That's a terrible one. It hasn't worked out the entire time the war's been going, and I think that's what's going to continue. So I'm with the 63%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to be with the 63% at this point. I think that the war is most likely going to be continuing well on into the future until Russia can no longer handle the economic strain and an economic collapse forces the war instead of a lack of will. The Russian government largely does not have to consider a lack of will into their equations because any sort of lack of will in the public they instill by increasing the beatings, and morale improves when the beatings increase, as we all know. So for that reason, the Russian Federation will never have to worry about a lack of morale in the country stopping the war effort. The only thing at this point that will stop the Russian war effort in Ukraine will be the fact that they can't financially afford to continue the war. That basically is the only thing, and we think that that's probably going to be coming around in about a year and a couple of months or so probably towards to the latter part of this year or maybe at the beginning of 2027, they'll eventually run out of funds and finances because if the economic tightening continues that the Ukrainians are doing on their oil monoliths, there is no way that they will be able to survive the collapse of the major oil industries, even if the Chinese tried to step in and help them financially. So generally, we would believe that that's going to be the main thing that would stop them. For now, though, it's become incredibly clear that the Ukrainians can count entirely on the European Union, or generally the Europeans alone, to support the state of Ukraine, as the United States has completely lost any leverage or control over the situation, which has been an incredibly interesting occurrence over the past year. Due to the actions of the current president of the United States, we've seen that the United States has basically cut all military support to the state of Ukraine, and over the next 2 years, we're only going to be giving them $800 million, which is $400 million a year. This is compared to the approximately $25 to $30 billion that we were giving them every single year before the new administration came into power. That was generally seen that the United States was matching Europe in spending, and for that reason alone, had an incredibly large amount of sway and control over the ongoing situation on the battlefield. However, due to the President of the United States greatly decreasing the amount of support that the United States is giving to Ukraine, and also threatening the Europeans and making incredibly hostile statements both towards their governments and also towards their strategic position, this has led the Europeans to massively ramp up industrial spending on their militaries and also their industrial military output. This now means that Europe is largely self-sufficient for all military to financially and militarily support Ukraine indefinitely, meaning that the United States has literally no control of the situation. If we threaten the Europeans just walk off and tell us we're on their own. We are on our own, and then they continue to support Ukraine well on into the future. Basically meaning that in the president's attempt to try and gain absolute control over the situation, we have completely lost all control over the situation in Ukraine, meaning that if the Russians do start a larger war in the Baltics due to how the Europeans might handle this situation, the U.S. has absolutely no control at this point as to how that happens or when it happens. We're literally pretty much just out of the equation entirely due to how the foreign policy situation was handled. So,
you know what is weird though? The U.S. is not giving military assistance for free. They're still selling weapons to Europe to then sell to Ukraine, which is an entirely different equation than simply giving stuff to Ukraine. But there's one thing that is a matchup to public rhetoric coming out of the United States. The CIA is giving Ukraine unprecedented levels of intelligence about where to find the Russian Shadow Fleet vessels. That is how Ukraine's been striking using these Sea Baby drones. That's how they've been striking these vessels, is based on the intelligence that the CIA is giving to Ukraine. So that's a big change. That change happened as recent as just 2 or 3 months ago. That started happening. And also around Venezuela, we've seen the United States seizing Russian oil tanker after tanker multiple times over. I think they're on their 7th tanker at this point that the U.S. has seized. So despite the public friendship that the U.S. president seems to have with Putin, it seems like behind the scenes they're kind of doing a little bit of the opposite. But in the public, they're kind of like bashing Ukraine to an extent, but they're also providing them pretty important intelligence behind the scenes, which is kind of not very consistent.
Yeah, I would have to say it is a little bit odd. I would generally say I think the CIA might be doing that more so out of their own abilities, more so than any sort of direct authority by the president at this point. But it does seem as though at the moment that we are seeing that the state of Ukraine is having some issues. And also, by the way, folks, I want to say this really quickly. I've seen some people saying that there's audio issues, and who are saying they can't hear on stream. And I've never seen these names before. And I see some other people repeating it that we know, saying that there appears to be audio issues. If I could ask all of y'all to not say anything, if you are personally not having an audio issue, do not put audio issue in the chat, because I think that this might actually be some sort of an attempt by bots, from what I can tell, possibly, to actually just try and distract us from covering the news and have us focus on a non-existent technical issue. I'm not really sure if that's the case, but that's kind of looking like it at this point, because I just noticed that it was a great deal of accounts that had a certain sort of an MAGA deal. Just for some reason, I looked over in the chat, and there was 3 of them that were saying that at the exact same time, and it made me start to think. I was like, I think that might actually be some sort of an attempt to distract us from coverage on air.
And also, I just listened back to my own audio there for a second. I'm sounding clear as a bell. Like, I'm coming through perfectly fine. I just listened back to it myself live off of YouTube. So I don't know what's going on with that. My audio sounds fine.
Yes, folks, if you are on the channel and you are having an audio issue, please let us know. But if you are not having an audio issue, please do not repeat anyone else saying that there's an audio issue and put that in the chat, because I think we're going to try and iron down here whether this is some sort of an attempt by bots to make us think there's a technical issue or not, because if that's the case, then we're going to have to start reacting to that and working with it. So anyways, moving on from that though, and on into the rest of our news that we have for the night, and getting back to our analysis here, I would definitely have to say that the armed forces of Ukraine are not really getting any U.S. direct support, and while they are getting intelligence support, which is definitely helpful, as far as direct military support, which is generally the most important for Ukraine's longevity and being able to fight the war, the U.S. has completely lost all hand or control over that situation at the moment, and it basically is in the hand of the Europeans. And some people would say, that's great, but I'm going to tell y'all that it's not, and I'll explain why. The United States of America is the leader of the Western sphere, and while some people may say that the Europeans are useless, most people say that because they're ignorant and they don't know a lot about Europe. The truth of it is that Europe is incredibly important to the United States of America for economic, strategic, and military purposes. Let me ask you this. If we bomb Russia one day, who's bombing them? The U.S. Air Force is. But where are they bombing them from? Air bases in Germany, in Britain, in Poland, and elsewhere, and in Italy, which are where we have our bases at the moment, in Romania, and even Turkey as well. So if we don't have those air bases inside of Europe, we can't directly face down the Russian Federation on their own home soil with overwhelming firepower. We can't. So another major question here is, the West makes a great deal of money, but we make a lot of money off of our trade. We trade goods with the Europeans, and they trade goods with us, and then those in America, basically flipping them to make a dime. A BMW that's sold from Germany to the United States is not sold for less at a dealership. It's not. It's always sold for more, meaning that Americans are making money. So with that in mind, if we see that the United States and Europe are making a great deal of money off of each other, which is $1 trillion in collective trade, then the Europeans have a great deal of value. But that also means that we need, as the leader of the sphere and having a sphere of influence in East Asia, the Americas, Europe, and the Middle East, we need to see that the United States has general control of the developing situations within all areas. But that also does not mean that it's absolute control to where we can make stupid decisions that are completely to the strategic detriment of our allies and ourselves. Meaning that we need to see that funding, or if this was the smart foreign policy decision, funding to Ukraine should have continued in large amounts, so that way we could have seen that we were still outspending or matching the spending of the Europeans, and making sure that we still had general control over the outcome of what's going on inside of Ukraine in the Ukraine war. And we all hasten tempo at that point by talking to our allies about how much support we're giving so that way we can overwhelm the Russians in terms of Ukrainian firepower, and also try and up our military spending collectively to prepare for an eventual war with Russia, which still appears to be on the horizon. That would have been a lot smarter than pissing off the Europeans and basically leaving them on their own to where they are entirely self-sufficient to make their own decisions, which might impact us. And also on top of that, it's made it to where we have absolutely no hand or control over the war in Ukraine or that ongoing situation. So generally, that's a foreign policy blunder by all measure. So with that in mind, we are going to be moving on at news coming out of the Russian Federation, and we are going to be moving on down into the Middle East for a minute, because we have seen some other developing situations within this area. And while the public reports are getting a little bit murky at the moment, and we're not really sure where it's going, at least for right now, we can tell that there is something that's going to be happening within this area, as a large amount of U.S. tankers, 2 of them, including an MQ-4 reconnaissance drone, were spotted conducting racetracks and orbits within the area of the Persian Gulf, which is showing that there are some form of aerial activities currently happening within the area of the Persian Gulf by the U.S. Air Forces. We also understand that the USS Abraham Lincoln has most likely started to make it very close to the Arabian Sea at this moment, and that they will most likely be arrived to start preparing for air operations against Iran. Additionally, we have also been able to hear that CENTCOM has done something incredibly important. On the 14th of January, U.S. Central Command reported opening a new air and missile defense coordination cell at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar alongside partners, aimed at improving integration, information sharing, and joint response to aerial threats across the Middle East. This is a temporary pop-up headquarters that is created to try and centralize air in the Middle East amongst all of our allies within the security assurances sphere. That would include Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and also most likely Oman and the UAE as well if necessary. And also there's not really any U.S. forces remaining in Iraq, so basically there's a gap there at the moment, but we won't cover that one. But still, beyond that though, this is giving us a moment to see that the United States of America is actually coordinating with our allies to make sure that there's a coalition air defense network to where we have a larger air defense perimeter that's unified, cohesive, and effectively communicates to be able to deal with and shoot down incoming Iranian threats as quickly as they possibly can. We've also been able to see, additionally outside of these U.S. developments within the region, that inside the Islamic Republic of Iran, the revolution still carries on. The flame hasn't died out completely yet, at least in Tehran. We haven't been getting any other footage outside the country except for Tehran, which makes us believe at this moment, because we can't really confirm the ongoing revolutions elsewhere, that the revolutions in other parts of the countries may have been suppressed and completely put down, but the one in Tehran is still going at a bare minimum, at least for now. We have been able to hear that the Iranian government, or at least the CIA and Western intelligence agencies, are reporting that several hundred officers have defected from the IRGC and the Besiege in the ongoing revolution, although we really don't know what they've done. We just know that they might have not shown up for work and they might have gone AWOL. We also understand that the Iranian state media has finally put out their death toll for the revolution, which according to them is around 3,117 people. And we know,
and they think that's supposed to make them look good. Like, I mean, that number's obviously, it's obviously a bad number. It's not even accurate. But I mean, even at that low number of 3,000, that still makes Iran look horrible. Like, even at that,
it really does. It honestly does. And it's crazy, folks, because this number is put out by Iranian state media, meaning that this number is far smaller than what actually occurred inside of Iran. They're trying to downplay it, and even downplaying it, they're saying that about 3,200 people were killed. That's an insanely high number, even if that is a lowball estimate. That is huge. That lets us know that it definitely is around 12,000 dead. And in the meantime, while that statement was made today by the official state media of the Islamic Republic of Iran, we were also able to hear that the President of the United States stated that he hopes that there will be no need for future action on Iran, as it appears that all the executions and the killings have stopped, and for that reason, there's no reason to do anything about it. Although, The President of the United States stated before anyone had been shot and killed in the streets that if the Islamic Republic of Iran shot and killed anybody in the streets, the U.S. military was going to respond. They then cut off the internet, killed about 12 to 20,000 people, turned the internet back on. They're still shooting people and they're still executing them. But now the public statement from the U.S. government is that there's no real reason to do anything to Iran and it's all going to be good. The Israelis think otherwise, though. The Israelis are also saying that an attack might be coming within days. And according to a direct statement from Haaretz, Israel's defense establishment has raised its level of alert in recent days, amid concerns that the U.S. president has decided to attack Iran possibly in the next few days. So it appears that while the president's saying that there's no reason at all to go into Iran, although they did cross the red line that we claimed that we had, where if anyone was shot and killed, we would intervene, and 12,000 to 20,000 dead later, we're basically saying that we're not, the Israelis are believing the opposite, and they're believing that this might be some sort of a guise to eventually see that attacks are conducted inside of Iran by U.S. forces, which also seems to be likely because we're seeing that there is a decent amount of U.S. force movements within the area, which would heavily suggest to us that there is a likelihood for attacks, and generally this sort of a foreign policy prerogative at the moment, or more so foreign policy actions and developments, it seems very similar to the kind of fake outs that we did against Venezuela before we went in and we kidnapped Maduro or nabbed him out of the country. So that seems to be fairly similar at the moment, and it also appears that a lot of people are noticing that Iranian military forces are being spotted moving around the country in large numbers. We have seen them moving around Mochaher 6 drones, which are reconnaissance drones, and also a huge amount of IRGC and besiege forces throughout the entirety of the country. And it appears that at the moment, a lot of people are talking about that. And Matthew, what are you thinking about it? And what are people thinking about it as well?
All right. So we are seeing that Iran is bringing out all the stops. They're bringing out all their air defense. They're bringing out tanks. They're bringing out all kinds of heavy military equipment for some reason around the major cities. And there's multiple reasons they could be doing this. But what is the likely reason for it? 58% said to put down more riots, while 22% said for air defense against future U.S. strikes, and 16% said to prepare to attack Israel and the United States bases. And generally speaking, I think Iran is doing this in preparation for air defense. I think that's primarily what they're trying to do with this. I don't think it's necessarily put down more riots because I think the IRGC and also the police forces have generally terrorized the civilians into going home for the most part. So I doubt they're bringing out tanks for that reason. But they are probably getting ready for this massive force buildup that the U.S. is currently doing in the Middle East that they believe is going to be strikes on their country. So that's my guess. That's my best guess for it. And also with that, by the way, of course, Iran would want to counterattack our bases and also Israel as well. That is what we're expecting, that Iran will probably launch a very large counterattack against our bases. And they're also probably getting ready to put that stuff into position as well. So I'm with the 23%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm most likely going to be with the 23% as well. I have a feeling that the movements are to prepare for eventual attacks because from what we've seen, most of the riots have already been suppressed or literally killed off at this point. There's really nobody left inside of Iran to even conduct a riot or a protest. So with that in mind, it's most likely for air defense preparatory actions that are happening in the area right now. Also, speaking of which, while most of them have been put down, and I have to make sure to make it clear to y'all, from video and picture evidence that we can see, most of the protests have been put down. We haven't seen any proof of any protests going on in Isfahan or really anywhere for that large part, except for very seldom clips here and there every few days. And large any of the ongoing protests or riots are within the country. So at the moment, all we can work off of, because we work off of video and picture evidence here to corroborate information, is that the only thing we can see is stuff going on in Tehran. That's it. The rest of the country looks like it's been completely put down at this point, and Tehran is the only one that's still kind of keeping the flame alive. So I'm going to show y'all some of the clips that we have gotten over the course of the day out of that area, and let y'all see a little bit of what's going on. We did see that they did set fire to a bank called the Future Bank, which apparently is affiliated with...
No future now. That bank has no future.
It appears that the Bank of the Future apparently got turned into the Senders of Tomorrow because the rioters or the protesters, they set the entire bank on fire. Man, have fun.
That looks like the future right there. I tell you what, the future is very bright. It's very fiery, and it's very hot.
You know, Matthew, I wonder if in Tehran's future they're expecting to run out of water even faster because the firefighters are going to be trying to fight these fires with water they really don't even have.
I think they're going to have water fighters before you know it. Like, you know how they have the firefighters? They're going to have water fighters. They're going to be trying to put out that water.
Man, they're going to be trying to find water and beat the hell out of each other for it. Man, that's my water. Bam! Yeah. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see that some of the demonstrators in Tehran were ambushing the police. Look at them, folks. They're all on the sidewalks. It looks like they're following the rule of the law. But here comes an IRGC motorcyclist. Oh, and they actually have that trap remix. And then they start storming the streets and trying to attack the motorcyclers as they're coming through. Oh, and it looks like, and a couple of them are getting mobbed. Oh, and they set the motorcycles on fire.
What the? Was that like a jump cut or something? How'd the motorcycles instantly catch on fire like that?
I think it was a jump cut because there's no way that happened that quickly.
Yeah, they knocked the guy off. Back that up for a second. They literally knocked the guy off the bike. It fell over. The mob descended. And then all of a sudden, fire was spontaneous. Look at that. Yeah, there was a jump cut right there. I see it now. So, interesting. So, apparently, the IRGC or the police didn't get the good end of the stick on that one. They actually got their motorcycle burned down.
And it looks like they got beat down there. Like they're getting a beat down.
Also, by the way, look at that fine Persian rug store over there on the left. They got the rugs on the wall over there.
Dang, actually, that's kind of like high quality. Man, I tell you, it's a shame, folks. We just can't get any of those. We can't get any of those great Persian rugs here in America. We have to get the ones that are made in other countries because we have sanctions on Iran. But those do look like some pretty fine rugs right there, I will have to say.
Notice they're not burning the rugs. They get to have a pass. But damn, son, look at that person. That person was literally kicking the motorcycle while it was on fire. They were putting their foot into the fire to kick it.
Man, bro, that guy is angry. He's literally kicking a fire. He's going, And I'll tell you all this, folks. I have huge respect for the Iranian protesters because in none of the clips so far have I heard, like, I have not heard that in a single clip in the whole deal that's been going on in Iran for about a month now. I got a lot of respect for them. They have a lot of self-control in not throwing that into every single video ever made in the country. But while we've been keeping things light, at least here for now, things are going to start getting a little bit rougher here in a moment. We were able to see this other clip of the ongoing protests in Tehran, but our last clip here is going to be showing you once again the incredibly dark reality of what's actually going on outside of the clips that we've shown you all so far. So here's this clip as well.
That's a surprisingly big crowd to still be out in the streets. Now, granted, it is Tehran, but I mean, that's still a big crowd considering that across the other parts of Iran, the IRGC and also the military is just lighting people up. These people are still out there.
I would have to agree. It really is something, but I'm about to actually show you what was happening in the daylight hours inside of Tehran here in this clip. This clip is not it's not graphic, I'll make that clear, but it does show us at least the other end, the firing end of the RGC and the besieged still firing into the crowds with live ammunition in the middle of broad daylight, crazily enough. So here's this clip. You see the IRGC and the besieged advancing down the street and firing into the crowd.
And I wonder how they justify this in their heads, like for the government, like with this. It's like if they claim to be a just government that actually serves the people, how's it serving the people to send out goons in huge numbers and start opening fire on crowds? It's like, how does that even? I mean, obviously, it's a dictatorship. I think most people with any intelligence know it's a dictatorship. But even for their own propaganda purposes, the people can't even believe or can't even buy into the propaganda because they're literally firing on their own people in the streets by the thousands.
You know, that's actually an interesting thing, Matthew. You've asked the crux of the question. How in the world can the Iranian government say that they're serving the people? They don't. They actually do not serve the people. They serve the religious ideology of the Islamic Revolution. And the government doesn't serve the people. The government serves as the instrument for the Islamic Revolution, and therefore it demands absolute loyalty from the people to further the cause of their Islamic Revolution. That's how it works inside of Iran. So whenever the people rise up against the government, that's not something to say that the government's had a failing. They're not serving the interests of the people. It's actually looked at the opposite way. The people have failed the Islamic Revolution and are enemies of God, and therefore they deserve no sympathy, no justice, and they deserve to be killed like dogs in the streets if they continue. That's how the Iranian government looks at it, and that's how they've been speaking about it for the past few days and weeks. As a matter of fact, every single time this has happened in Iran since 1979, that is the way that they treat it. They treat these people as enemies of the government, and they should be put down like dogs, because being an enemy of the government is being an enemy of their religious pursuits and plan, and for that reason they're enemies of God to be killed.
Yeah, that's really something else. It makes you wonder who in their right mind would even want a government like that. It makes you wonder why more people aren't rising up inside of Iran. There's huge crowds out there. Like, don't get me wrong, these were massive crowds that were in the streets. But it's hard to believe that the Ayatollah has any followers with a mindset like that. Like, even if you follow his ideology, like, surely those people don't subscribe to being put down like dogs if they go against even one piece of minutia that they put out.
And you see, folks, I gotta give a little bit of a warning to folks. This is why you never want to see that your government recognizes an official religion. You start getting into this stuff. If a government ever recognizes an official religion, what you can see this throughout all of history, it's not the government that serves the people, it's the people that have to serve the government and fall into the will and line of whatever sort of religious dogma that they're putting out. And you might not even agree with it, and it really won't even have anything to do with your actual religion. That's honestly the truth of it. And that's what a lot of people get wrong. Because look at politics right now. Like, just look at it in the United States, for example. I want to take a minute here to address this. A lot of people, they towed a party line and they pulled in the United States. But let me ask you this. How many of the party policies in either political party in America do these political parties actually follow through on trying to implement or actually implement in this country? And the answer would be an incredibly small amount of that is ever implemented or followed through on. It's basically used as a slogan or a punchline to get people in line and to follow their party. So imagine if those sorts of politicians got a hold of your religion, whether it was Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, or whatever it is, and started to tell you exactly how to follow your own faith and religion, and it bended to the will of whatever those politicians wanted. And if you ever fell out of line with that or disagreed with them, the thing that's happening to these people in Iran would happen to you. That's why the separation of church and state in Western countries is an incredibly important part of our governmental institutions, because it allows for you to be able to believe whatever you want to believe, and also gives you the ability to disagree with other people and to disagree with the government, which shouldn't even be involved in that discussion, and not deal with someone declaring you an enemy of God and having you shot in the streets, like people are being shot in Iran still today. But with that in mind, a lot of people are talking at this moment about the situation inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran and what's going on with these protests, at least inside of Tehran. Because while it does appear that it's still going on quite strongly and the Iranian government is still trying to violently put them down, a lot of people are wondering where this is going to go from here, especially considering that it does appear that the U.S. is building up forces within the Persian Gulf and the general part of the Middle East to be able to conduct strikes, or at least appear to be able to conduct strikes, on the Iranian state. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so we can see that in the capital city of Tehran, inside of Iran, there are still isolated protests happening there. When we say isolated, we mean isolated to the city of Tehran. So it's still happening, but across the rest of the country, the protests have been put down violently by the IRGC, and most people have gone back into their houses out of pure safety reasons. They don't want to get shot, and obviously you can't call them cowards for that. They'd be crazy to stand out there and get shot anyway. So they went back home. So is the situation over now that we're seeing these isolated protests still going on? 50% said no, the situation will escalate again, while 24% said yes, the protests have been squashed by the Iranian government, and 20% said it's a 50-50 chance of it flaring back up. And I'm actually with the 50%. I think if the USA strikes these IRGC targets inside the country, that could be the trigger to get these people back out in the streets yet again. And also it could be the trigger for some groups, like perhaps the Immortal Guard and other anti-IRGC groups, to maybe rise up and try to overthrow the Ayatollah if these strikes do take place. Because the one thing the Iranian people are looking for is they're looking for a real sign from the West, meaning the United States or Israel or somebody. They're looking for a sign that they're going to be backed up in some way or another. Right now, their hopes have been kind of dashed because they were told help was on the way and help never arrived. So maybe the U.S. could redeem themselves by showing up a little bit late, better late than never, I guess you could say. And maybe the people will come back out for a round two and maybe have help from armed groups this time. So I'm kind of hedging my bets on that. I'm with the 50%. I think it's going to escalate again, but the timeline's a little unclear. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say I would actually be with the 50% as well. I think that this might have a chance of resurging. I'm not sure how large that chance will be, but it seems as though, at least from what they're hearing outside of the country, they're getting a little bit of hope to try and keep the flame alive, at least within Tehran, which would be the most important part of the country to keep this going. The central government is there right now. They haven't relocated their government to a new capital yet, meaning that if they're able to take advantage of that situation in the capital, they will be able to probably topple the government with support from the ground, at least from the U.S. forces or the Israelis. So I would have to believe that I think this might have a chance of rekindling and re-escalating again. But also at the same time, I'd have to say that it's wildly unfortunate how much loss of life that there has been due to the wildly slow response that we've seen. People would have died either way, most likely in the thousands, but considering that probably 12 to 20,000 people are dead, and some people are even going as high as 30,000 inside of Iran, I feel like our response could have been a little bit quicker and a lot sooner to see that with all of those people who have died, even if they were to die anyways, they wouldn't have died in vain, at least in that moment of time when they were getting shot and killed in the streets. But I hope that does address it the best I can. But we have a bigger fish to fry right now, folks. One that I've got to say is very concerning that's coming out of Syria. And a lot of y'all will be going, damn, how big does that fish have to be for me to say that Iran isn't even really that big of an issue at the moment right now compared to what we're seeing inside of Syria? And I've got to tell y'all that what we saw out of Raqqa today in Syria is wildly concerning. So concerning that I'd have to say that there might have just been a critical foreign policy failing by both the prior administration and the current one in recognizing the Jolani regime. In Raqqa today, which is the largest city within this area of Syria, right there on the Euphrates River, it's also the largest city that was under the control of the Syrian Democratic Forces. We have been able to see that the ISIS flag was raised over the center of the city today, which is generally giving us the idea or the assumption that ISIS is now in control of the entirety, or at least the city center, of Raqqa. I'm going to show you all the clip here really quickly. Here it is. That is an ISIS fighter on top of the central archway near to the roundabout in the central area of the city of Raqqa, literally waving the ISIS flag. And they're playing their music as usual. I'm going to have to mute that. But we don't really know if they've taken control of the entirety of the city. But the fact that this guy is here, and it doesn't really appear that anyone's opposing him or stopping him, or thinking that basically the Jolani government just gave over Raqqa to ISIS. That's what we're assuming at the moment until we get information to prove otherwise, because the Jolani regime has been going around and releasing thousands of ISIS fighters from their prison and allowing them to basically return back to what they were doing, which was a life of terrorism. And now we're seeing that not only have they already conducted a terrorist attack in Kabul and Afghanistan, it now appears that they've taken direct control of Raqqa, at least from this clip, which apparently was filmed and published by ISIS. It's very concerning, I'd have to say at the least. And we've also seen that outside of the city, some SDF fighters are still trying to hold on to the Al-Atqan prison near to Raqqa, and they were stating they were going to try and hold on to it as long as they can, because if they do not, then that means that Jolani's guys are just going to come through and release thousands more ISIS fighters back into the open wild of Syria to go join ISIS again, and we could see them making this statement in this clip right here.
ام هیرو ده حبسا اقتانا دا برخدانه کی به هم پات مشانده اف چتاین ای داعشی که ده زندان دا جبو که کنکوژیک لسر گل نیک کرن پاراستنه کی دومدار تی مشاندن ول در دور آمجی وک خلکه کی چنبره کاتی چی کرن چتاین گریدای حکومتا شامه
The rest of the video is just him making the address. But as you can see, it's a fairly small group, and we believe that there's more that are outside of the camera that are also with them. But it's not a wildly large group that's involved in this, but they are going to be trying to hold this prison and fighting the attempts by the Jolani government to take control of the prison because they want to try and stop the release of these ISIS fighters for as long as possible in the hope that the U.S. might step in and stop this situation before the Jolani regime takes control of the prison and then releases thousands more ISIS fighters directly into Raqqa, basically allowing for ISIS to have what we would assume to be at this point about a brigade or two's worth of armed forces around the area of the city of Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor, which are major cities on the Euphrates River. A lot of people are wondering what's going on with this one, and I'd have to say, folks, that it's really something. It is something else. I just got to say it again tonight. It's something else, folks, that people don't just look with their eyes and pay attention to common sense in the U.S. government. And I've got to say that it's something else that people will sit there and defend these people in the U.S. government, even when it makes no damn sense, and then watch this happen and then wonder why we're here. We have been saying for a year now, well over a year, ever since Jolani massacred all of those people on the Latakian coast, where the Alawite Arabs lived, that this guy was clearly still a terrorist. We had given him about a month at that point to figure out whether he was still a terrorist or not. He clearly was. That was a year ago. And we said, this guy is clearly a terrorist, and he's going to be going around inflicting hell on earth on any minority group within the country. And not only that, he's so terrorist aligned, he's probably going to start leaning heavily into the radical Islamic ideology that he already professed in the HTS, which was already an offshoot of Al-Qaeda and generally ISIS, because the guy who gave old Jolani the permission to break off from Al-Qaeda and create the HTS was the guy who then went on to create ISIS. That guy's name was al-Baghdadi. So it's not really that far off to say, at least a year ago, that this guy was definitely aligned with terrorist groups. It was even more so the case when we saw that ISIS was re-emerging from the depths around the area of Palmyra and Idlib, and we saw that they were taking control of highways, they were ambushing U.S. forces, they were starting to cause havoc and hell, and have already killed 3 U.S. soldiers at this moment within the area. And the response from the Syrian government, non-existent. They did nothing to try and stop the ISIS fighters in Palmyra, Idlib, or anywhere. The only people who were trying to stop them were us. And now we're seeing that they're marching into our allied territory of the SDF, releasing thousands of these people back into Syria to go recreate and reform ISIS. And not only that, it appears that they're giving them practically no opposition. They basically just lost the city they took from the SDF just a few days ago, and it doesn't really appear that it's going to be stopping there. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this whole situation, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we are seeing some very disturbing footage coming out showing that ISIS flag being raised near the town of Raqqa, which is very concerning because also the Syrian forces are obviously there as well in the midst of that situation. So what is happening now that we're hearing about ISIS prisoners being released apparently by Jolani's forces, allegedly? What is going on? 45% said Syria likely signed an alliance with the ISIS group, while 35% said Syria is being taken over by ISIS, and 12% said it's simply a rogue Syrian faction that is sort of friends with that group. And I would personally be actually with the 35%. Actually, let me flip that around. I'm actually with the 45%. I would say that Syria likely has come to some alliance with ISIS because remember this. ISIS was setting up checkpoints along some key roads inside of Syria before this whole situation started happening, and they were allegedly hunting down Jolani's men and trying to execute them on the sides of the road because Jolani's men were not doing what ISIS wanted them to do. So that was one report right there. I think what Jolani might have done here, and this is speculation, we have no proof to be able to say this is indeed the case, but I think in order to keep the peace and let Jolani remain in charge, his government might have come to some agreement to sort of be neutral with ISIS to a degree, so that way they don't overthrow Jolani and get rid of his government. I have a feeling that's likely what's happening in the background because we're seeing tons of ISIS being released from prisons, which is horrifically bad. We're also seeing the U.S. forces are racing to the region, whatever forces we have left in Syria, trying to keep these ISIS fighters in their prison cells so that way they can't get out and cause havoc. So It's a disaster, and Jolani does not appear to be stopping it, which is not good either. And right now, Syria is at a very big risk of being taken over by these ISIS fighters. If they can amass enough numbers, that's a huge risk. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I would believe that I'd be with the 46% or the 34% that Syria is either being taken over by ISIS or Jolani is largely aligned with ISIS, or the government of Syria under Jolani is aligned with ISIS. And this is something that I gotta say is really funny, folks, because when we would say, well, it looks like they clearly have some sort of preference to ISIS, people would go, oh no, the HTS, they fought against ISIS in the middle of the Syrian civil war. It's like, yeah, they did, because they were threatening to completely crush the HTS back then, but that doesn't mean that they're ideologically separate. They're very similar to each other in many ways. I mean, if you looked at the HTS in the middle of the 2010s, and then you looked right next door to ISIS, they were practically identical, at least in the kind of morals and radical Islamic ideologies that they professed. They were basically identical. I mean, it wasn't that far off. So it wouldn't be crazy to believe that now that Jolani's in power, he's basically going, hell, like, honestly, ISIS isn't that bad. I never disagree with them anyways, especially on their moralistic points. So we ought to let them generally start sweeping over the country, and then I can use that as an excuse to largely create an extremist Islamic government inside of Syria, and then just explain to all of my Western allies, oh, well, you got to understand, I mean, ISIS has got a very strong foothold here, and I have to appease them to remain in power. And then he'll use that as an excuse to basically turn Syria into a radical Islamic regime of some form. I would say that that's generally the high likelihood at this point, but that also means that ISIS is going to be gaining ground and a lot of control inside of Syria, maybe even control inside of the Syrian government through Jolani's regime. And if they do that, that means that we're basically legitimizing ISIS as an official state at that point inside of Syria, and then allowing them to conduct endless acts of terror throughout the Middle East. Basically, what this is going to turn into, folks, is that if we get rid of Iran and we get rid of Khamenei and all of them and the IRGC that fund Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, al-Nusra, and others, we're basically replacing them with al-Jolani's government, which is basically just going to be another radical Islamic government, which is also going to fund further acts of terror and destabilizing actions throughout the region. We're literally getting rid of one to see another one brought in simultaneously at the same time. This has been a humongous failing of foreign policy, and before people go and try and point fingers at only one person or the other, this was a failing of the current president and the last one. The last president was the one that took the HTS off of the terror organization list and also recognized Jolani as the official leader of Syria. The current administration has done nothing to reverse that. If anything, they've even enhanced it by inviting Jolani to the United States and bringing him here, and also treating the Syrian interim government and Jolani as the legitimate government of Syria, and encouraging them to continue to exert power and influence in the country to that degree, while not confronting any massacres that have been conducted by the Jolani regime, or any genocides that have been conducted either, and completely acting like those aren't happening. Not only that, we've completely betrayed our incredibly important allies, the SDF in the Northeast, and allowed for them to get curb-stomped and steamrolled without the U.S. as much as even lifting a finger or even lifting our tongue to even utter a statement of condemnation to the Syrian government for doing something like that to an ally that we had in the Northeast. It's absolutely crazy to watch like this sort of a foreign policy disaster unfold. Because I would say this. Some people are going to say, well, Enforcer, you said that he might be a good guy. We said that he might be a good guy, yes. And then we said, let's give him a little bit to see if the guy's still a terrorist or not. And then once he clearly was a terrorist, we completely backed off the guy and said this guy's a bastard and he's still a terrorist and all of his guys are still terrorists and we should not support these people because they're not to be trusted and they are going to turn against the United States at some point in the future and they're going to try and manipulate us in the meantime. That's what we said after it became clear who they were. I'm not for bombing someone immediately like the Israelis did. We said, let's give them a little bit to observe them and see what they're about. And then we observe them enough to know that they're still terrorists. And then we have to treat them as such. And then the U.S. government, instead of treating them like terrorists, we basically legitimized them and acted like they were a legitimate government. And now we're at that impasse right now to where we either have to delegitimize them after we've already legitimized them, which will look like a hit to our reputation, or we just have to pretend like they're not ISIS aligned and then just watch the country basically turn into what ISIS always wanted, at least inside of Syria. So with that, I hope that does address the situation in Syria the best we can. And before we move on into the rest of our news, folks, we do want to make sure to say a huge thanks to everyone who's been watching so far tonight. We've actually had about 12.4 thousand people here. And also, we've had about 56,000 views so far. And we're entirely appreciative and greatly thankful for all of y'all watching so far. And before we move on into the rest of our news for the night, including a little bit more out of the Middle East, well, actually, that's actually all of our news out of the Middle East at the moment. We're actually going to be moving on up into the Americas and also Europe and then on into Ukraine. But before we get to all of that, I do want to make sure that we take a brief moment to address a couple of questions from the chat. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so let's jump into our first of 3 super chats of our first super chat segment, and this one goes to none other than Mark Ead, and Mark Ead throws in a $50 support, and thank you very much, Mark, for keeping the channel running with that support, and also throwing in support literally all the time, and we do appreciate that. And Mark said, chicken and filter funding, and Wicked Wednesdays, LSA, New Zealand, and one from the chat follows.
Hey, thank you so much for the amazing support, Mark Eden, helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say that I thank you for the chicken and filter funding. I got coffee filters and I got that Costco chicken. You know it. We gotta have that Costco chicken. And I gotta thank you massively for the support all the way down in New Zealand on a Wicked Wednesday. And we will make sure to take one from the live chat in your honor, Mark Eden. So Matthew, what do we got?
And the one from the live chat is going to go to AF Kaplan, who said, assuming the U.S. does carry out airstrikes against Iran, how likely could the collateral damage be to the civilian population?
It depends on the kinds of targets that are attempted to be hit. If they're within populated urban areas where no one's been evacuated, collateral is going to be a very high likelihood or a certainty. And if we see that it's within more remote areas of the country, collateral is going to be largely non-existent, if present at all. So it really depends on the kinds of targets that they would plan on hitting. And at the moment, I would unfortunately not really be able to give you an idea of what kind of targets they're planning, because the military operation that we ended up conducting against Venezuela was far outside of the wheelhouse of anything that we were expecting in general, because we were working off of a very conventional and orthodox sort of a military strategy framework on what would be done, and then we did something that's basically unprecedented in history, and also, in my opinion, didn't really turn out that well. But, not the operation itself. The operation itself was flawless, but the aftermath in terms of diplomacy and foreign policy, it's not really that good. So I don't really know what we're planning inside of Iran, but it really kind of depends on what sort of war plan they go with. And if they're planning on striking the Iranian government in Tehran, collateral is going to be almost definite. If they're planning on striking IRGC facilities and military bases that are generally away from civilian populations, collateral is going to be fairly low as a likelihood. So with that, I hope that does address that live chat the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also a big shout out to Robert Krogan, who threw in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Robert, for also supporting the channel all the time. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And Robert said, I'm not sure I'll make the end long workday. And welcome, enforcers and the LSA, and take one from the chat.
And I gotta say, a huge thanks to you, Robert Krogan, for the support. And I hope that you were able to make the long work day, I hope. And also, we thank you for being here tonight, Robert Krogan. You are an old guard and a channel legend, and we're always greatly appreciative of folks like you who help this channel to keep on running and make this thing a possibility, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel rolling. Folks who support this channel are somewhat fewer in number, but they make the channel entirely possible for both us here behind the scenes and all of y'all to have a show every night by helping us to be able to fund ourselves and make this our full-time job. And I gotta thank you massively, Robert Krogan, for that incredible support, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would never be able to make this thing a reality and keep it running. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, we will make sure to take one from the live chat in your honor. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, and this live chat question goes to Smiling Wolfette, who puts in a really good live chat. And they said, do you think the buildup is late due to being able to combine forces for Iran and Syria by the United States?
I would say that there's a chance. The U.S. has already been conducting airstrikes against ISIS forces in Syria for a little while now. But we're running into the usual issue in that airstrikes that do not follow along with any ground action are not as effective as a lot of people want to believe them. And so I would say that we probably are building up forces inside the Middle East at this moment, primarily to deal with the Iranians, but we can also be building them up to deal with ISIS, although we generally have enough strike forces within the area, also within UCOM, to be able to deal with them at the moment. But I would have to say, folks, that if it was my honest take, if it was my straight up analysis on what we should be doing in the Middle East, bar whether this is popular or not, I'll tell you what would be the most successful. Airstrikes followed up with ground patrols. That's really the only way that you could fix the situation in Syria, because you can bomb any ISIS camps that you want. But if we're not able to draw them out to where we can hit them, if they're not at a camp, then they're going to exist there for a while. And considering that the Jolani government already appears to be very sympathetic, if not aligned with them, we can't count on Jolani or anyone else to really deal with the situation at this point. Basically, we've already forced ourselves into gathering up a whole other coalition to fight the war on terror, basically, and go in there and deal with ISIS. It's unpopular sounding because a whole bunch of people go, what about the soldiers on the ground? And I got to just say this, folks. Yeah, it's not great. I don't want to put American soldiers in harm's way either. But at the same time, we basically just allowed ISIS to start taking large control of the country. So we either deal with this now, or, hundreds of people might end up getting killed here in the United States from attacks that they're able to conduct because now they have the funding and the backing to be able to do it, and then we have to go over there anyways. So I would much rather say that a couple of U.S., like if we're speaking about the greater good of what's going to happen in this country, I would say that it'd be better to take preemptive action and send U.S. soldiers back on the ground to conduct patrols, whether the Jolani government likes that or not, and deal with casualties there instead of having to deal with hundreds of fatalities here on the home front, because that will happen. That's a fantasy to think that that wouldn't happen otherwise. And it's I just got to say, folks, the foreign policy stuff for years has not been good, but it drives me crazy to just watch how stuff can be overlooked by like sheer ignorance and stupidity all the time. We could see this coming for a year. We could see it coming for a whole year. I don't even know why in the world we're having to talk about that right now, because this could have been dealt with a while ago by just reinforcing the SDF and sending more U.S. forces into northeastern Syria, and that would have largely started to put a damper on this at the moment, and then that would have given us a good position to work from then on. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on into the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have from around the world.
All right, so our last one of the segment goes to Robert Betancourt, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Robert, for that support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And Robert said, do you think that some of the military members in the U.S. Will resign their positions if they are sent to Minneapolis for statue deployment? Is that really the way it works? So I think like the problem, I haven't served in the military, so I can't say this for a fact, but wouldn't they still be technically liable for disobeying a lawful order? Everybody's going to debate whether it's lawful or not, but I'm not sure if they can just refuse to do that. Is it possible to resign after getting an order you don't agree with, or is that not how it works?
I think you can resign if you get an order that you don't agree with. I think there is a possibility for that, but I wouldn't really know.
Even if you're enlisted, enlisted people sign contracts. Can you just resign from that?
Oh no, the enlisted guys just have to do whatever they're told, but the officers can resign.
Yeah, I was speaking of the people like the enlisted guys. I was like, I don't think they can just resign. I'm like, an officer might be able to resign their commission, but an enlisted soldier just can't.
And if an enlisted soldier refused orders, that'd technically be insubordination. An officer, though, could resign because there have been officers in the past who have just said that something is so stupid that they just straight up resigned and basically gave up their position and forfeited it because they refused something that vehemently. So there is the chance that officers could resign. But the enlisted soldiers, if they refused an order, that would be insubordination. So generally, folks, what the situation is there, if you're talking about a situation like that, where someone's going to refuse an order, it would be more so the responsibility of an officer to refuse an order and then give an order to his men, the enlisted men, to also refuse the order as well. But that wouldn't come back on the enlisted men at that point. That would come back on that commanding officer for some sort of a disobedience of orders, insubordination, and whatnot. And then he would be tried under the Uniform Code of Military Justice for that crime, but all of the soldiers under him would not be, because they were just following his orders, and he's the one in charge of that unit and in command of it. So, that's generally how that would work from what I would know. But that generally is a domestic political situation at the moment. We really don't get into the nitty-gritty of all that at all, because that truly is a domestic situation. But just speaking on who can resign and who can refuse an order or not, enlisted men are pretty hard pressed to be able to have an ability to refuse an order, because everyone always says outside of the military that you can refuse an unlawful order. Um, but that isn't really how it actually works. You really can't. Like at least for enlisted men, you really can't refuse an unlawful order, because if your commanding officer, say your lieutenant in charge of your squad, tells you, "All right, lay him," lay him low, hit him with a machine gun. As an enlisted man, if you say, "No, I'm not," you've just conducted insubordination, which then opens you up to further criminal action that'll be opened up by the military in a court-martial against you. Yes, the order may have been unlawful, but the truth is that the enlisted guys actually do get the ability to say, "I was just following orders from my commanding officer," and that might not even work for them in the end. They might still get punished depending on what the tribunal in the court-martial believes to be appropriate. But an officer would be the one that's most liable in those sorts of situations. If an officer gets an order, "Okay, fire into that crowd with a live fire, mow them down," and they go, "Huh, okay, open fire," and then they give the command to their enlisted men to do that, that guy is going to be the one who's generally held responsible at the end of it. Most of the enlisted guys will get off scot-free. But if the officer goes, "Huh, that sounds kind of messed up. No, I'm not going to follow that order. I completely refuse that," then you'll see that he would still be held liable depending on what would happen, or there would be a larger debate within the Congress, some sort of congressional hearings and congressional inquiries and tribunals to see whether that was appropriate or not, and then that guy might also get off scot-free because it wasn't a legal order, and then he didn't follow it.
I feel like it's extremely risky for like if an order is clearly unlawful. I mean, technically they would have the right to refuse it, technically. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you could technically do and get away with it. But whether or not it actually turns out good for the person is a whole nother story. Because like you're saying, they're going to be on the hook to have to answer for why they disobeyed the order, and that gets really hairy really quick. Because it seems like the way it would work, at least based on my layman's knowledge, it seems like they would give the benefit of the doubt probably to the idea that the person is likely guilty of insubordination, because if they let a whole bunch of enlisted people start deciding what orders are right, which orders are wrong, and then they start refusing a bunch of orders, that can get nasty really quick. So I mean, good for the people who see a legal order and refuse it, because that's not really something that I think a lot of people take lightly, and really they shouldn't, really, because that can lead to some really bad consequences.
And also, I see a lot of people saying the enlisted troops can refuse unlawful orders, and technically that is correct. But what I'm trying to explain, folks, is getting out of fantasy land of just saying something in black and white. There's a lot of nuance to that sort of stuff, because at that point you're basically putting it within the hands of an enlisted soldier in real life terms, that he could basically say that anything is an unlawful order or not, and then you have to have a court-martial on everything for possible insubordination because he was refusing something that was an unlawful order. Like, for example, let me just put this out there. There have been a decent amount of military massacres that have been conducted in U.S. history, like the Biscari massacre in Italy in 1943. And generally, if you go back to that situation, you would see that the NCOs were the ones that were held responsible for that massacre, not the enlisted men. If you go back to Ai Drang in Vietnam, it wasn't the enlisted men that were generally held responsible. Basically, nobody was held responsible, and if anyone got anything, it was the officers who got slaps on the wrist, or some form of criminal punishment, but it was usually very minimal. In real life, while there is on the books the ability to refuse an unlawful order, you also have to understand that you're in a chain of command system in the military, and orders are generally given to be followed, not to be questioned. And so while you have the ability to refuse an unlawful order, at that point you're kind of taking your life into your own hands, because you might end up getting off scot-free, and you might end up being cheered by the public as doing the right thing. Or you might end up in Fort Leavenworth and nobody hears your story, and you basically end up shit creek without a paddle. That's also how it could go as well. It's more so, just to be completely honest, at least the historical examples that we know of in the U.S. military, it's generally more so on the officers who refuse unlawful orders than it is the enlisted. NCOs are kind of in the middle ground along with the warrant officers, but enlisted men are basically given orders, and if they do not follow through with them, they are going to get hell to pay. If it does not reach the public, and then there's some form of outrage in that level that stops those enlisted men from getting the wrath that God put on them by the upper command. So,
it seems like it would have to be a pretty damn bad order for an enlisted person to actually be warranted in refusing an order like that on the grounds of it being illegal. It would have to be pretty serious, because I mean, everybody has to realize that while it sounds good in theory to have people simply refuse unlawful orders, I mean, there's an element of subjectivity to it, because obviously an enlisted person they're not a lawyer, so they don't know the law necessarily. They might be mistaken. They could be a legal order and they're simply mistaken, then they think it's illegal, and then they end up refusing something and causing a disaster perhaps because they refuse an order. So, I mean, that's very tricky. Like, people, I think, take that way too lightly when they say like people should just refuse orders. That's a tricky one. Now, obviously, if something is horrific, like for example, if there's an order given to like unleash machine gun fire on civilians, I would hope that the military would refuse that. I would hope. But that's an extreme circumstance. That's a very extreme example right there. That's not just a minor incident. That's a serious one.
Yeah, no, and it's fairly nuanced, folks. Like the historical examples that we have, that's a very nuanced sort of a thing. It's not just everyone has the ability to jump away from an illegal order. A lot of the enlisted men don't. Like they just have to follow it, whatever it is. And then the officers are generally held responsible for giving the enlisted men the order, because the officer was expected to be of competency to understand what is a legal order and an illegal order, and then give his soldiers the orders to follow them. Because you also have to remember, folks, like if we're talking about a very complex sort of a system like a military chain of command, the officer is the one responsible. There is no general coming down to the privates in first squad, third platoon, second company of the 3rd regiment of the 167th brigade and telling that guy to go shoot someone. That isn't happening. There's orders that come from the top that are very broad, like, fire on civilians. And then that's brought down to the level of the officers, all the way down the chain of command to those company commanders, which are the captains. Those captains then are going to tell their lieutenants, which are in charge of actually, it would be more so how a captain would be in charge of a platoon. But then that captain is going to tell the lieutenants that are in charge of a squad what to do. Then it's on those lieutenants that are the squad leaders to tell their men whether to follow that order or not. Then it's on him, or it's on whoever refused the command higher on up above him, the platoon commander, the company commander, the battalion commander, the brigade commander at that point. Whoever refused that order, then it's on them. But generally, if it makes it all the way down to the enlisted, there's been some sort of a major failing, and they're generally not going to be held responsible, because that order had to pass through so many different officers above them in the chain of command that basically the whole system was against them. If they refuse that order, nobody's going to have mercy on them, because that lieutenant got his orders from his captain. That captain got their orders from their major. That major got their orders from their colonel and the brigadier and so on. So nobody in the chain of command above them is going to back them up if they refuse that order. They're basically screwed. So, they generally don't have a lot of leeway to not follow an illegal order or not in reality. They technically do on paper, but also on paper, you have the ability to go and start complaining about harassment in the military, but historically, there's usually some sort of reprisals that are conducted if you try and report some form of harassment in the military. Like, technically, you can't get harassed in the military. Technically, you can't get hazed in the military. But if you ever try and report it, God forbid, you're going to be in a lot of trouble with a lot of people on your higher-ups on the command structure, because you technically most likely broke the chain of command to go and report that sort of a mistreatment to someone else higher on up. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, because, we're speaking in hypotheticals. Sure, anyone and everyone can refuse a lawful order, but if we actually throw in the whole politics of the military command structure and the chain of command, it's going to be pretty difficult. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Also, really quickly, let me check this U.S. Army squad, because I got to be honest with y'all, folks. Someone said a sergeant is in charge of a squad. I'm pretty sure in the modern day, a lieutenant is in charge of a squad. Oh, shoot, I'm wrong. It actually is what appears to be some form of a staff sergeant. Where in the hell did I get that information from? That it was a second lieutenant. Huh. You're actually correct. Thank you for correcting me on that, because some way down the line a while ago, I had heard that the commander of a squad these days was actually a second lieutenant, which I always thought was kind of a little bit like officer heavy. I was like, why in the world is a second lieutenant in charge of a squad? Actually, a lieutenant's lead platoon, so thank you for correcting that. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on out of that question, and a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are going to be moving on into the rest of our news for the night, which is going to be moving us on over into the United States, and specifically something near to us. A couple of hours south down the road, we make it to the area around Area 51, and someone caught something on film. And it was quite interesting. We don't really know what it was, But it was
We
kind
can't
of
show that. We cannot show that video, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, we won't be showing that then. We reposted it on Twitter, but we can't show it for some reason. But moving on from that and on,
That's from a just to give credit. That's from a guy's YouTube channel. I think his name is Uncanny Adventures. That's the name of the guy. He does a whole bunch of adventures out there near Area 51. He actually got a really good catch there with that video, but he actually catches a lot of interesting stuff on video, sort of roaming around that area out there. So yeah, that guy caught that. That was pretty good. I think he brought out like night vision or something. He's pretty dedicated to going out there. He's spending some big bucks apparently on going to look at these things. But honestly, like the aircraft kind of looked like a Vectis to me, based on the shape of the silhouette. It kind of looked like that new Vectis drone that I think it's Lockheed recently talked about.
yeah, it was pretty interesting looking, I'd have to say. And moving on from that and on into Washington, we also got some additional statements over the course of the day. According to, let's see, it was Keith Kellogg. He stated that if the winter is harsh on the Ukrainian armed forces, but they survive, the momentum in the spring and the early summer will generally be on the Ukrainian side. So we also were able to hear at least some positive news from Keith Kellogg about what he thinks is going to be going on. Also, the president announced that he's going to be ordering an additional 25 B-2 bombers, which are about $1.3 billion a piece, meaning that right now we're looking at a cost of about $30-something billion for 25 new B-2 bombers, which is a little bit interesting because that airframe is now getting on towards being 50 years old, about 45 years old, really, and we already have B-21 Raiders that are going to be coming out in larger numbers for tactical operations, and instead of using those or just ordering a larger number of those, we're going to try and restart the entire assembly line, which has been deactivated for about 40 years or so, to produce another 25 B-2 bombers. So a little bit interesting with that. I would have to say I don't really know what the greater plan with that is, but we'll see. Anyways, moving on from that and on into Europe, we have also been able to hear that the United States of America has now completely backed off of military force being used in Greenland. And the president has now ruled out force to take Greenland during a speech at Davos, following European troop deployments to the island, and also following a great deal of statements that were made today by the president, in which he said, if they don't do something nice for us in Greenland, we're going to remember it. So basically saying if they don't do something, which I don't really know what it would be, we're going to be really sad. And it turns out, folks, that not long after that, the president then put out a tweet that then said that a deal had been made on Greenland to where the U.S. would be allowed to build more military bases in Greenland, but Denmark would retain control of it, which sounds amazing, like he managed to negotiate us into something really good, until you remember that that's already the existing treaty from 1951 or so that we've had for about 70 years. So basically, he just negotiated our way into the existing treaty we already had with Denmark, and also ended up sabotaging a lot of relations with the Europeans in the meantime. So talk about going nowhere fast. We basically ended up where we already were, which we were saying on the channel for weeks now was the most advantageous position we could be in without completely pissing off Europe. So we ended up going that whole giant circle to come back to square one, which is what we've been saying the entire time. So moving on from that, we also were able to hear about that, at least a little bit more in detail, which I'll read y'all what we have right here. This is according to the New York Times, by the way. The announcement followed a NATO meeting on Wednesday where top military officers from the alliance's member states discussed a compromise in which Denmark would give the United States sovereignty over small pockets of Greenlandic land where the United States could build military bases, according to 3 senior officials familiar with the discussion. The officials spoke on condition of anonymity and to discuss a sensitive diplomatic matter, and they said the idea was one of Mr. Root and that he had been pursuing it. 2 of the officials who attended the meeting compared it to the UK's bases in Cyprus, which are regarded as British territory. The officials did not know if the idea was part of the framework announced by the president. I asked for comment about the deal and its contents. NATO said in a statement that negotiations between Denmark, Greenland, and the United States will go forward aimed at ensuring Russia and China will never gain a foothold economically or militarily in Greenland. So this also, by the way, I want to say that this is kind of like the if, ands, or buts of what the deal may be, but it seems as though from the statement of the president, it basically was, we're just going to build some more military bases like they already exist, like Patufik Space Force Base, and that's going to be about the end of it. So that seems to be the situation at the moment. And we also were able to hear as well at some statements in Davos today that European leaders, including the president of Finland, Stubb, were asked if Europe could handle itself defensively on its own without the United States. And they made it incredibly clear that they can. And if the United States wanted to just walk off from Europe, they could really care less at this point, and they'll just rearrange their situation to where Europe will basically be in the same spot but the United States would be worse for wear, now having lost its major ally within the continent. And it appears that a lot of people are actually considering that statement, it's a standalone statement for a large part, as to whether the United States would be able to see that Europe could defend itself on its own without U.S. support. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so do you believe the claim that the EU says it can defend itself without any American military assistance? The child is leaving the home. I'm just joking, by the way. Please don't go off on me. The Europeans in the chat, they're going to go off over that. But the EU is saying that, so what do you think? 41% said yes, Europe can defend itself alone, while 30% said no, they need U.S. military rescue if they got into a bad situation, and 25% said maybe in a few years, then yes. And I'm going to sort of change the whole premise of my answer here. Europe shouldn't even be having to say this in reality. We should be able to come to Europe's rescue and not have them have to think about defending themselves alone. That's the whole point of the NATO alliance. But the reason why the EU is saying this is because they feel that the U.S. is not going to be there if they need help. So they're saying they can defend themselves mainly out of like a defensive reflex, or trying to basically flex their muscles to ward off the enemy by saying that. So to me, I view it more as a symbolic statement. I think if Europe was invaded by Russia and they were aided by China, then Europe is going to need some help from the United States, which there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, the U.S. has this perspective at this point that if Europe asks for help, then they're freeloaders. But I don't look at it that way. I think European security, also Ukrainian security, is American security. So I don't see any freeloading relationship going on here, because Europe provides for their own militaries, and if they need help, and we want to make sure that democracy prevails, then we should be willing to help out if Europe gets invaded. So I don't really understand why we're making a big deal about it, but it has become a big deal. And I think Europe would need a military rescue, if I'm being perfectly honest. At least right now, I'm with the 32%. They would need U.S. help, but I don't find anything wrong with it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, I mean, honestly, I would be with the 40%. They can kind of do it on their own. Because Russia is not that big of a threat, to just be completely frank. Europe could deal with them on their own, even if the U.S. was still in NATO. If the U.S. and Europe split out of NATO, Europe could still handle them on their own, because if the Ukrainians can give them a run for their money, with the Ukrainians basically being a non-existent country economically and militarily pre-war, basically any larger country in Europe could give Russia a run for their money, most likely single-handedly, if not even beat them conventionally on the field. The Polish could probably beat them. The Germans could most definitely beat them. The French certainly could. The British could also have a pretty good run for their money with the Russians, just to be entirely honest. And I do not care, folks, how many people are saying, British stockpiles run out of munitions in 3 months if we go to war with Russia. That's the truth in every war. I don't know, like, if people know that, but in the War of the Frontier at the beginning of World War I, already by November and December of 1914, most sides were running out of ammunition. And that was when everyone was already ready for World War I, and they still ran out of munitions within months, and then had to get all of their mobilization going on the home front to be able to produce munition on a constant basis. So it's really more so of a misnomer when people say, the munitions can only last for months, because that's how it always is. And you also have the ability to produce new munitions. It's not like these things are rare, and once you use them, you can't get them back. You can just make more of them. So with that in mind, I'd have to say the Europeans could probably definitely fight against the Russians on their own. I mean, I would just be entirely frank with y'all, they could do that anyways. Like, whether or not there was a schism going on or not, Poland could take Russia single-handedly in a fight and probably have a pretty damn good go at it. So that's what I would think.
But you know, they would have help from Belarus too. You gotta factor in Belarus.
Man.
They'll add in their 50 men and their shovels and pickaxes, and they'll probably go at Poland. And they're right there on the border too. But you have to remember, though, it's not always necessarily about just raw might. Like, raw might is good, but you need to have the ability to actually maneuver and transport that stuff. And for example, if the Suwalki Gap was taken and all of a sudden the Baltics got invaded, I think they would need U.S. help at that point to be able to fix that situation, because Europe could try to fix it, but then they're at risk for Russia counterattacking them from a different angle, perhaps, possibly. That would be a lot for Russia to pull off in their current state, but if they had help, it could be possible.
I don't really think so, because there's not really a lot of different angles that they could attack from. And also on top of that, one, if they fight Europe right now, Ukraine will join the war on the side of Europe by default. So the Russians wouldn't be able to attack through the Black Sea because any landing force would be repelled by the Ukrainians before the Europeans even had to fight it. The Europeans also have anti-ship batteries, so they never conduct an amphibious landing elsewhere. And Europe's air force is larger than Russia's in a comparison of nearly 5 to 1. So there would be no way for the Russians to ever gain any form of air superiority to conduct airborne operations because they get shot down out of the sky before they could ever do that just because they're simply outnumbered. So I mean, honestly, I don't really see of any way, especially if the whole of Europe is fighting Russia, that Russia could ever pose a conventional threat to Europe. If they attacked first, they would get some ground just because of the element of surprise, but that wouldn't even last that long either. And I think a lot of people are really underestimating what Europe is capable of. Europe is capable of military industrialization, as they've already been showing over the past few years, and if it became a wartime and an emergency situation, they could start to put that into hyperdrive and basically turn into a war economy overnight. So I would say that that's definitely a likelihood, and I would just be straight up. Russia is just not that much of a threat. China will not be able to help either because they have no ability to actually send large expeditionary forces to join Russia, and on top of that, they wouldn't want to be put at odds with a major market that they might be able to tap into, especially if there's a schism that separates Europe from America. They wouldn't want to put themselves in such an openly adverse position to Europe that they basically force Europe right back to the United States. So I don't really, they might support Russia, but it's not going to be anything like the PLA is now fighting on the Russian front against Europe. Like maybe it would be dual purpose support or something like that, like they're doing in Ukraine already. But it wouldn't be anything to completely drive Europe towards the United States again.
Yeah, I've heard that some people are talking about this idea to keep the United States interested in, wanting to uphold the NATO Article 5 treaty and also the alliance itself, that maybe there might be some sort of strategy of a finders keeper doctrine implemented. Like, for example, if the U.S. has to come in to protect the Baltics and the U.S. successfully defends the Baltics, then the U.S. gets to keep it.
Huh, that's an interesting idea. like,
How does Europe feel about that one? Also, by the way, that's just some stupid clown that was running his mouth about that, by the way. So don't take that seriously. But someone actually did say that. I'm not going to mention their name as they are political, but someone actually did mention that as an idea, which is insanity, by the way. That's literally the same as Russia taking it, which is a whole thing that Europe's trying to avoid. But, it's not transactional. I think the U.S. needs to stop looking at the NATO alliance like it's a transaction. It's supposed to be a friendly alliance. It's not supposed to be like, give and take, like it's supposed to be equal. Like if the U.S. does something for Europe, then Europe owes us or something. It's supposed to be there in case we need it as an insurance policy, saying you don't have to get necessarily equal benefit out of an insurance policy for it to be useful. It just has to be usable when you need it. So I don't understand why the U.S. looks at it like that. They ought to look at it from a like an actual reasonable standpoint instead of like a business deal or something.
Yeah, I would say that's not a good look, and it also isn't really boding us too well, at least at the moment. So I would have to say that would be my 2 cents on it. I think Europe could defend itself alone. Hell, I think any individual country, at least of a larger scale in Europe, could defend itself on its own. And when I say that, I'm not meaning every country. Like the Baltics would get steamrolled, unfortunately, but Poland could definitely defend against Russia on their own. Germany could. France certainly could. Britain could. Italy even could. I mean, most of those countries, the larger ones, could definitely hold their own against Russia. And also on top of that, before someone says, oh, but Russia has nukes, bing, bing, bong, bong, the French and the British also have nukes. So it balances itself out because there's no way for Russia to nuke Britain without Britain nuking Russia. And there's no way for Russia to nuke France without France nuking Russia. So it ends up becoming a mutually assured destruction doctrine again, which basically is the Russians at a zero gain sum if they went into a nuclear war. So with that...
Oh, yes, I see someone does not know their NATO alliance well. Bad one, sir. Oh, man. This fellow in the live chat called Scallywag. That's interesting. But Scallywag said NATO doesn't pay their share, and he did the flipping the bird sign in the chat. This is the problem, Scallywag. Before you go out with so much confidence like that, saying something that, and no offense, I'm not trying to jump on the guy or dogpile him or something, but you don't understand what you're talking about. First of all, there is no such thing as NATO paying their share. It's not like a common fund or something. That's not what NATO is primarily based around. It's based around collective defense, meaning each country contributes 2% to their own military. So, for example, let's just take Germany, for example. example, Germany contributes 2% of their gross domestic product that they produce in their country monetarily to invest in their defense. So that way, if we ever need to enact or activate Article 5, Germany has a functioning, capable military that can respond to the threat against the alliance. That's what it's about. It's not about paying money into a common pot. That's what the U.S. president has been trying to make it sound like. That's not the way it works. And also, that's what a whole bunch of propagandists want to make it sound like. So that's not even the way NATO functions. I think if people got a straight understanding of that, the propaganda wouldn't really work, which is the problem. That's why they don't want to educate people about it, because otherwise the propaganda falls apart.
Also, one other thing that I saw someone say, what do you mean hold their own against Russia for how long? Well, I mean fight them, and they last indefinitely. If Ukraine can last indefinitely with hardly any Western weaponry, given to them in a trickle, over 4 years, with an economy that basically doesn't exist, especially compared to any other European power, anyone in Europe could hold their own against Russia. Hell, Poland could. Poland has an army right now of about 300,000 men. That's the exact same setting that the Ukrainians were in at the beginning of the invasion in 2022. But Poland has nothing but advanced Western equipment. Ukraine didn't have any of that starting off the war, and they still held out, and now they're kind of running like a half-hybrid, kind of like NATO equipment from the 80s and the 70s, and then the rest of it's Soviet sort of an army in the modern day, compared to Poland that has an all-Western fighting force using NATO doctrine and is able to emphasize air superiority because they have the aircraft and also the tactics and strategies ingrained into their air force to do it. They could fight the Russians and probably end up winning. It wouldn't be quick, it wouldn't be easy, but Poland could probably win a war on their own against Russia in several years' time, probably 2 to 3 years, if they were left to their own devices. A country like Germany or France would curb stomp the Russians, because Germany and France both have an economy. France has an economy that's twice as large as Russia's. Germany has an economy that's almost, well, actually, no, correction here. France has an economy that's about 3 times as large as Russia. Germany has an economy that's almost 5 times larger than Russia. And so in terms of spending parity alone on what the Germans could afford to blow up the Russian army with versus what the Russian army could afford to blow up the Germans with, the Germans are going to beat out the Russians every day of the week in military spending and also war industrial capability if they needed to, because Germany has a far more advanced and also a larger industrial base to work with than the Russians have. And in a war these days, that's all you need. You need a lot of money to spend on buying weapons and explosives, and then you need a lot of factories to produce weapons and explosives with, and the Germans are going to best the Russians in that sort of a game every day of the week. And also another thing I saw someone say is that, well, Europe can't hold their own because America has 11 aircraft carriers, and that's more than anyone else in the world has. Russia has 0. Europe has, in reality, 3 actual aircraft carriers, but if you count the LHDs, they have about, I think, something like 8 or so aircraft carriers. You want to count an LHD as an aircraft carrier. Russia has 0 of either. So the Europeans already have naval supremacy over the Russians at that point. The Russians do not have ground supremacy, air supremacy, or naval supremacy. They don't have spending supremacy, and they also don't have industrial supremacy either. So they're losing in every single front. And they certainly don't have, like, once again, economic supremacy, especially in the condition they're in right now. That would basically like toppling a house of cards for most European countries if they really put their mind to it. So I hope that does address it the best I can, in my opinion, because I think the I think that anyone could knock the snot out of the Russians these days without even breaking a sweat, in Europe, in America, or anywhere. But anyways, and also someone just said wars aren't won on the sea. What are you talking about? Every war's been won on the sea. What are you talking about? Like in World War I, it was won on the sea.
You win the war in their mind.
No, you win the war at sea. Like it's like no.
It's in the mind.
Oh yes, the mind of the ocean, like the Atlantic, the Pacific.
You know what Mike Tyson said? Before you go into a fight, you got to defeat them in their mind first.
Man, I mean, defeating them in the mind is a good thing, but if they're starving to death because you can't get food in the country, that's another big one. Because in World War I, I mean, that's true. But in World War I and World War II, the Germans lost both wars because they were blockaded, basically. So you could say that that war was won at sea for the large part. On the land, there was huge battles, sure. But if the Germans can't really get a lot of the equipment that they need into their country from overseas because they can't ship it there, that they're kind of losing the war at sea at that point. Also, Britain could have lost the war if it was for the U-boat menace, and the fact that we didn't end up deleting that menace from existence by about late 1942. The British would have been cooked if that wasn't the case. Japan lost the war at sea entirely. I mean, literally, the entirety of the Second World War in the Pacific was literally lost at sea for Japan. There was basically no there was no land fighting except for the small island hopping campaigns that they were conducting just so that way they could build supply lines that further beat Japan's navy at sea. So, I mean, that's a little bit of a stretch to say wars are not won at sea. I mean, whoever controls the seas controls the world. That's been the going metric for hundreds of years, and that's why major navies are incredibly important across the world over. That's why the Chinese are building up or are trying to build up the largest one in the world. That's why we try to have the largest one in the world, is because naval power is real power. An army's great, but a navy truly changes the way a war will end up being won or lost. But anyways, with that,
Remember to have your firepower in order. Like Alexander the great conquest of the world. You gotta remember.
have you ever killed a man?
Real quick though, we're gonna make this one quick because we gotta get back to the news. But this poll right here says, do you believe Europe freeloads by relying heavily on the United States for NATO defense? Surprisingly, the poll's almost even. I was kind of surprised by the result. 59% said no, they do not freeload, and 41% said yes, they do freeload by relying on the United States for defense. I would personally say they really don't freeload because it doesn't work like a common defense spending pot. So it's really, by definition, they really can't freeload. If they're spending the 2%, which some countries weren't, now we'll admit that was a problem. I think they're raising their defense spending, which is about time they did that. They weren't off by a lot, though. I mean, they were down by a little bit of the 2%. But, it wasn't monumental. So I wouldn't go as far as to say they were freeloading. They needed to bump it up a bit, but it wasn't freeloading. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it wasn't freeloading. I think that they were generally doing fine on their own. And also, technically at this point, we're saying that it's a 5% GDP spending quota. We don't even reach that here in the United States. Even with a $500 trillion increase that's planned for next year, we still won't reach 5% defense spending here in the United States per percentage of GDP. So I would say that they're certainly not freeloading. And on top of that, at least up until recently, there wasn't really a threat in Europe to deem or necessitate any real large point in military spending, at least for them. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have from around the world, which is going to be moving us on into Ukraine, as we have been able to get a decent amount of news from the front lines today. Let's get on into it. We were able to see some Russians getting hit by the border guards in Sumy. Take a look.
Sue me.
Aw, man, why don't you sue me? Aw, man. Oh,
We're gonna sue for peace. Oh my God. Oh, he's sleeping on the job. They don't like that.
they sat there and they said, sir, people are sleeping on the job. And I said, why don't you get him up? And they said, well, he seems to be sleeping for a very long time. I said, what do you mean? Why sleep long when sleep short? But they were hitting him, I tell you. Oh, goodness. We also were able to see another clip here of them hitting the Russian forces with the Steel Border Brigade, which is also a part of the border guards. This Russian's running a little whimsically. La, 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 la. Oh, there he goes into the bunker.
Man, I tell you what, this is what goes on in a lot of people's minds. It says not ready on the drone, but it was ready.
He's not ready. Oh, look.
I can't do it. I can't do it. And then the drone did it.
Captain, I don't think the drone can handle much more of this. We're putting it at maximum capacity. Damn it, Scotty. Put in that juice. And then the drone goes flying right through the door.
Damn it, Scotty, stop being a coward and get over there and get to work.
Damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not an engineer. Well, yeah, you're right. That's Scotty's job. Oh, hello. Hey, laddie.
I don't want a doctor. I don't want a doctor named Bones. That's a bad sign.
I want my doctor named Death. That sounds like it makes sense.
I'll have to go find another doc. I'm sorry. I'm going to change my primary care provider today.
Hey, Dr. Death. What's going on here? But anyways, moving on from that, we also get to see the Ukrainians are working on some new innovations. They've rolled out a program inviting defense companies to test their small interceptor drones in Ukraine, and they'll pay them $20,000 a pop for each Shahed drone their product destroys. So they're getting competitive now, folks. They're really trying to get some good options out there and give cash incentives to do so. We also were able to see an electronic warfare system destroyed today. This one was kind of neat. It was an Article S. These are a little bit rare. But you see that they put it in a masonry chimney. Doesn't matter. They'll get it anyways. There it is. It's an ethical is, and they blew it up. To pieces, they say.
Oh. Dang. Like now it's smoking like a cooling tower.
Ah, man. The Russians, you know, they love to see that one happen.
They
Well,
learned that trick from Mao back in the 1800s.
but moving on from that, we also get to see the Russian casualty report. Oh my
Oh,
lord!
look, another bobcat. That's very nice. We got one bobcat today. I love to see that.
And we love to see it. We love to see it. And over the course of the past 24 hours, Mr. East Keeper of the Records has stated that 1,019 drones shot down is the third highest daily loss. January average double prior to 2 months. Big increase in artillery tied to 16th highest. Vehicles are the 15th highest loss. Tanks, AFVs, and MLRS are above the 7-day average. And troop loss average rises to about 1,100. So all in all, not a bad day whatsoever. And it does appear that the Russian Federation is continuing to take some pretty heavy hits. Not good for them, I'll tell you that. Moving on from that and on out of the location unknowns, we also were able to see near the Svatove area, then another ammo dump, this one a little bit smaller than the others that we've seen hit so far, got hit and blown up by the 40th Brigade. And we can see them.
There they go.
Oh!
Look at that. They were rounding the corner right as they realized that something wasn't right.
They were like, I can smell something wrong in the air. Oh, man. Like, it's like, man, very unlucky for them.
Ruby Knight said in the live chat, said, why the excitement over a bobcat? People have been asking that question for a long time, but it's just something about the bobcats. You'll understand if you watch the channel for a long time. You'll understand that there's just something about the bobcat losses that it just really does it for people.
Really gets people going. It really riles up the crowds.
Also, Elka said, do the Ukrainians even know we call them bobcats? No, they probably don't. They're probably like, what the hell are they talking about? It's technically special equipment, but we call them bobcats because of the little icon next to it.
You kind of sound sad talking about that.
Yeah. I didn't know where to go with that. It was an awkward pause after that.
Today, to see if I still feel. Man, like, bro, like, I was like, man, I don't know what I was supposed to do there at the end of that. You're like, yeah. And I was going to be like, hello, darkness, my old
I didn't know what to
friend.
say. I was lost for words. I was bumfuzzled.
Well, I mean, the cat got his tongue because he doesn't really know what to say. Yeah. But they're about to hit these Russians here in the forest near Severyansky. The Severyansky forest. Oh, look, a Russian. Pink. And there he go. He gone now. Oh, look, a second one. Mr. President, there's been a second drone. Oh, yeah, he threw the AK and it didn't work.
They're all doing that. They must be training them to throw their weapon at the drone because that's like the third or fourth video I've seen of a Russian doing that recently.
You know, it is kind of, oh, look, this guy, he thought he was being sneaky. He was not.
Man, he didn't even have cover.
Bro, that guy was creeping around like Winnie the Pooh when he thought that someone was making it into this, like, little den, and he whipped out, like, the cork gun, you know? Like, bro, he was creeping around like that. I've never seen something like that. He completely judged the direction of the drone wrong. This guy's playing Ring Around the Posy. That didn't really work for him. Ooh. Oh,
I mean, why don't they just surrender? It's like some of these people. It's like, why don't they just like do the white flag surrender or something? Like, why like go out like this?
I don't really know. It's a good question. Also, by the way, we were able to get a look at Chasiv Yar recently. That's what it looks like right now.
Oh my God, that's a city.
Yeah, well, it was a city. This was the city of Chasiv Yar. I think you might remember this one, Matthew, from a while ago before it was destroyed during the Battle of Bakhmut. Let me see if there's a street view down here. Oh, well, there kind of is. Let me see. So this is what it used to look like, generally.
Holy cow.
Let me see if I can get another view here. Yeah, here's what it generally used to look like. It's not the greatest looking place, you know. It's just a small town in Ukraine, but that's what it looks like now.
My God, like that's unbelievable. It literally took all the color out of it. It's literally just all dirt colored.
Yeah, and also on top of that, it also appears that the Russian Federation still hasn't been able to push out this town. The Ukrainians are still fighting them in here. So I got to say, I mean, the Ukrainians have literally fought them in Chasiv Yar for so many years in a row. The city has literally been reduced to nothing but stone, and that's about it. But moving on out of Chasiv Yar, we also were able to see an additional little clip as well, letting us see further on down the line and into the area of Pokrovsk, down in southern Myrnirad, the Russians were getting slammed by the 79th Air Assault Brigade. Oh, look, there's some
they have
Russians.
1, 2, 3, 4.
One motorbike, Two motorbike, Oh, two motorbike is the one. Oh, actually, it's not. One guy has turned around, he's making a run for it, and another guy has hopped off of his dirt bike. Uh-oh.
Oh, wow.
Oh, and he was
That's crazy. Like that was a bit of a plot twist. I was expecting the guys at the very front to be the ones to get it, but they let the heroic ones go. They went for the ones that stopped.
Man, it's tough for them, really. But moving on into Novopavlivka, we also got to see the Russians getting hit down here, and also getting captured by the 155th Mechanized Brigade. And we see them here trying to coax the Russians out. They're like, look, you're surrounded. Come out. One of them finally did. Here comes another.
I don't think I would come out of the foxhole. I think I'd probably like stay down there or something.
Well, I mean, they're just going to chuck a grenade down there if you come out. Well, if you don't come out. So I think you don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah, I guess not.
But that's the end of that clip, and it appears the Ukrainians were able to take 3 Russians successfully. We also were able to see the Russians getting hit by the 68th Jaegers in Pokrovsk as well, including this ATV. This guy tried to do something a little bit impressive there, but it didn't really work out. We can also see them flying around the streets looking for their next targets. Oh, and hitting this little trailer here, full of supplies. Oh, and what's this? A UAZ! Oh, they lost their car. Goodness.
Oh man. Oh look, we have Russians in the woods.
Russians in the woods. Bam. Like, oh man. Oh man, I'm telling you. Well, that's the end of the clip.
That guy's pants on the right is soiled.
Man, honestly, they came up with a new camo pattern, which they call unicolor brown, aka poo-poo brown. But moving on from that, it is time for us to make our way on up into Kyiv, folks, because it is time for us to get to the speech from the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. And Volodymyr Zelensky is one hell of a guy, a great guy, an incredible guy, and he makes speeches. Lots of speeches, long-lasting speeches. And we're going to be making sure to pull up that speech right here, right now. I actually didn't put a marker down on the map for it, and that is because, folks, there was no new speech today, and I had to double-check because I generally knew that there wasn't one before the stream, and I was trying to stall there to see if maybe for some reason they had put out one. They haven't. So, unfortunately, folks, we're going to be moving on straight out of the news segment and right into the question segment. But I do have to say, a big thanks to everyone who has been watching so far tonight. Make sure to stick around, everyone, because we're going to be getting on into the second question segment of the night, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And it's going to be a great time, folks. A truly wondrous time. We can talk about literally anything and everything. And I've got to say that a huge amount of people are here tonight. We thank you all so much for always enjoying these streams and sticking around and listening to the major news with us. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so y'all might have noticed today there wasn't a whole bunch of news to cover, at least big news. So tonight it's actually kind of laid back more than usual tonight because we didn't have a whole bunch of big stories to cover. There was stuff happening, but nothing crazy. It was kind of like a status quo to a certain degree today, except for the port attack. That was the big news today. It was that port situation. So we are now going to be moving back into our super chat questions, and first moving into our $20 support from none other than Old Warrior Fella, a longtime channel legend. We do appreciate you very much, Old Warrior, for throwing in that support once again. And he said, Russia is reported to have sold at least 75% of their gold reserves. And do you have any information on that?
And I thank you so much for the support, Old Warrior. And yes, we do. We actually, I think, reported on that about a month or two ago when they first started to do that. Because what they've been trying to do is that they've been selling their gold reserves because gold is generally not sanctioned ever to be able to try and raise money to fund the war effort. So they have been going through gold like no tomorrow, literally selling as much of it as they can. So that's why you're hearing that 75% of it's gone at this point, is because they've been in the process of basically burning through all of their geld and running out of it at this point, trying to find some way to float the economy and also scrounge up enough money to try and keep the nation running for just a couple of months more. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and a humongous thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I did see the story here about the Russian National Wealth Fund allegedly selling over 70% of its gold to fund the war since 2022. They claim that it had 160 tons left on January the 1st, which is about 192 billion rubles worth, and apparently, allegedly, will be sold by February the 5th, which is about 14 tons. At the current prices. So it does appear that they are selling it. That must be how they're sort of like keeping the, I guess you could say the crutches on the war effort is through those gold sales. And honestly, it's not a bad time to sell, because right now gold is at its all-time high right now. I think it's like it's almost at $5,000. I think gold prices are. So you know they're making a pretty big killing off of that, actually.
I'd have to say, I mean, they certainly are. And you know something, folks? I think it's time, folks, for us to really talk about something important, Matthew. I feel a song coming on. Silver and gold, silver and gold.
It's not that time, is it?
I think it is, everyone. It's time. It's time for silver and gold. And you know, there's no other place to get silver and gold rather than Colorado. I think. Am I right on that, Matthew? I think there's like silver and gold mines historically in Colorado.
I don't really know about where gold comes from personally. I just don't see the value in the gold. I know this was a huge argument. We had like an audience meltdown like a couple of months ago, and we discussed whether or not gold was a good investment or not. So I'm going to withhold my opinion on gold, but I have no idea where they get it from. It comes from a lot of places. Some people say it's rare earth. Some people say we have plenty of earth. Some people are saying it may be rare, but you know, while we have rare earths, we have a lot of earth, so we can find it. That's what they say.
That's what they say. Rare earths. We love rare earths. Take a look at this. These are all the gold mines and refineries here in the US of A.
Oh, there's a lot in Utah. We have a lot of gold riches.
Actually, those were in Nevada.
Oh, no, there's some in Utah right there. I'm looking at it.
I mean, there's a few, but there's a lot of them in Nevada.
You know what's crazy about that? That's a lot of federal land. So whose gold is it?
I hope for the IRS enters the chat, man. Like, it's like, man, I don't know.
The Treasury Department, more like it.
Oh man, you're right. You're right, man. You're right. You're right on that. Let's look at the names, Matthew, of these gold mines. Oh, look, Mercer's there. Wait, that's not even a mine that's running right now. So are they just counting every single gold mine in U.S. history?
Yeah, they're counting all of them.
Look at that. Yeah, because what the hell is Raft River Shaft? Who came up with the name for that mine?
Oh man, what a gold mine,
bro! And then they got the Coyote Group. That one must have been made by Trenderagua. But like, let's see. And then we got Baldy Claims, and then we got OK. We got West Dip. We got Golden Leaf, the Clementine mine. Let's see here.
Oh, I forgot a lot of the gold because I saw it on the Discovery Channel on a thing called Gold Rush. A lot of it comes out of that mine run by Parker Schnabel and the gang up there in Alaska. I forgot all about that right there.
No guts, no glory.
Everybody's listing off all the Gold Rush. Only actors is the right term. I guess you could say the stars of the show. I guess I'm not even sure if that show's running anymore. I watched that show like I think 7 years ago or something. So yeah, I mean that's where some of the gold comes from, at least. And then you got that guy that came in. What's that guy's name that would always come in? He had like the long beard and stuff like that. And he would come in like cussing like a sailor, talking about, you don't get that damn gold out of the ground. And he's like, looked like a miner, like a real old-timey miner. I can't remember the guy's name.
I don't even know, man. I know who you're talking about. I just know the guy who used to go, piece of piss. Like, I remember that guy.
That was him. That was the dude with the long beard and stuff. Yeah, it was the Tony Beats. That's it. Somebody got, I don't know how the hell they knew that. Yeah. the narrator would say, and Tony Beats is pulling up to collect his claim of the weekly gold from Parker Schnabel. And then this guy would pull up like with his long beard and stuff, like looking like he just came straight from the salt mines or something like that. Talking about, with my effing gold, I want my gold. It's like, what the hell is this? It's like, is this a real guy?
Man, you know what's crazy is that they actually ran real gold mines too. Like those were legit. Those weren't like reality TV deals. That was like a legit
Yeah, it was
like,
real.
business venture. Because most of them are like technically not real. Like they're actually kind of fake. Like one thing that's actually interesting, I didn't know this, folks, but this is kind of like a publicly known fact at this point, is that it's illegal to film in pawn shops in the state of Nevada. So like for the one show where they're in the pawn shop, I'm sure all of y'all know the name, I'm not going to say the name directly, but they actually can't film it within their actual pawn shop. So they have an entire set that's built that looks like a pawn shop that they bring pre-selected people into, and then they film it in there, because technically it's not a pawn shop, it's a set, and everything's already kind of been like a little pre-arranged. The one though that I did not like the most was the show Moonshiners. Like, you're telling me that the camera crews are with the law enforcement and the Moonshiners, and there just happens to be all of these run-ins that nearly happen, and they never notice the giant-ass camera crews between the police and the Moonshiners? Like, that whole deal, that one was very questionable to me. Like, you know, it's like, is that really real? Is that... Also, what are the mines in Alabama, Matthew? The King Placer Mine and the Devil's Backbone District. Bruh.
Oh man, Devil's Backbone's right there, kind of like where we grew up a little bit. That is, I can attest that is the Devil's Backbone. That was an appropriate name for that mine right there.
Man.
Call that the Hellhole Mine. Right there.
Man, meanwhile at that mine, man, you just hear like it's the morning, the fog is rising off the land, you hear the birds tweeping, beep, 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 and then you hear, "Fix your shit wherever." It's like, oh, that's the Devil's Backbone District. It's like, yeah, man, let's get it.
Go and get that gold, you bastard. It's like, man, just foul. Just be as foul as possible. I'll tell you what. I didn't even know there was a gold mine around there, to be honest. That's the first I've heard of that.
That's the first I heard of it either. I mean, where the hell is that even? You know, it kind of looks like it's in Lake Martin, honestly. Like, it's kind of around there. Let's type that in. Devil's Backbone. Devil's Backbone.
It's probably like a mine from like back in the 1700s.
Yeah, probably. What? What? No. That's not
Yeah, it
there.
must be defunct.
Yeah, that's... Hold up. Yeah, it must be, because it's up here on the map. It's up here around there, but it's showing down there near Troyes. That's where they make those CLUs, by the way, for the Javelin launchers, if y'all didn't know. Down in Troyes. But anyways, a little bit interesting with that. You know, it's a... Oh, and there's certainly no damn gold mines in North Carolina these days. Like, they're not that I would know of. There's gotta be a way that we can narrow this down to the working gold mines, right?
What about you know, we're looking at gold mines. I'm sure there's silver mines and stuff like that. There's uranium mines, but what about the Bitcoin mines?
Ooh. Like, oh, we're getting into something big here.
Like,
Man.
you know, there's like legit Bitcoin mines. Like, they have like legit like data center style places that mines just for Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, I know. Like, it's like, and apparently it's like hell to live around them if one of them pops up around. Like,
Oh, it's allowed. Yeah, it's allowed because at least from what I've heard, people say the server fans and stuff are so loud, and also the cooling systems needed to keep those servers cool. They're doing the mining. At least allegedly, it's supposed to be extremely loud. So if you're in the vicinity of the thing, you know it's down the way because you can hear it.
Huh. Yeah, I wouldn't want to live near one of those. And also, Matthew, you wouldn't believe it, but the biggest gold mine in Utah is that big, humongous Bingham Canyon mine that's literally like right within view of the whole city over here. And apparently it's a byproduct. It's not even what they're actually trying to mine. But in 2013, over the history of the whole mine, they had mined out about 6,000 kilograms of gold as a byproduct of the copper mining operation.
Oh, that's interesting right there.
Yeah,
I just don't know. Like, how do you get into the mining business? Like, that seems like one of those industries. Like, there's no real clear way to get into it. You're either in it or you're not in it, and it's not like you can just simply like go start a mine or something. Like, I've never really heard of anybody just starting a mine. I wonder how you like even get into that industry. Like, for the people that did start one, it's like, I mean, how do you even go about doing something like that? Like, that's such a like a very mysterious type of way or business to get into.
Yeah, I mean that is something. Also, apparently, man, all the gold mines here in Utah were shut down. The last one was shut down in 2001, meaning that the Bingham Canyon copper mine, which isn't even a gold mine, is basically the only gold mine left, and they're still mining out gold as a byproduct. Fairly expensive byproduct at that, but a very interesting deal there. Like it's just like mining is a very interesting sort of an industry to me. Like I just find mining to be wildly interesting because people have made an entire industry, folks, out of digging holes. Is basically all that they're doing. Because Bingham Canyon is a lot more complex than that because they actually have a little refinery somewhere in here. I think this is it actually. No, that's field maintenance office. They have some sort of a conveyor belt though. Oh, wait a minute. Is this it? I think this is it. But they do a little bit of refining on site, which is kind of neat for them, and they have a giant conveyor belt that brings the stuff to the refinery. But a lot of mines literally just dig out the ore, load them onto a train or something, and then send them on their way to someone else who runs a refinery. It's really a weird business because, everyone always has a fascination, folks, with just digging a hole. And these people have made an entire career and a living out of digging giant holes or digging out mine shafts somewhere. Really kind of an interesting business to me. But anyways, with that, enough of that stuff. A rabbit hole of a century right there. I guess you could say that's a real rabbit hole because we're talking about mining holes. You get it? That's crazy. But anyways, a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that you enjoyed that very interesting rabbit hole. And so with that, thank you so much once again, Old Warrior, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and starting us off on a rabbit hole about gold, then turn into mining and everything in general. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Ross Nib, and Ross puts in a very generous $50 support, and thank you very much, good sir, as well, for always throwing in support just like that, and we appreciate that very, very much. It does keep the channel running. And Ross said, it's absolutely disgusting to see the Islamic State criminals being released from prison in Syria, and thanks for the coverage, fellas, and you somehow managed to make me smile in the face of such madness.
I gotta say, humongous thanks to you for the support, Ross, and I gotta thank you so much for finding some value in the channel, and even a little bit of a laugh in the midst of it all, because we are living through a rough year. I gotta say, 2026 has already started off pretty rough, and I think this is just kind of setting the tempo for the rest of the year. But I do thank you massively for the support, and I'd have to say that it makes my blood boil as well to see that sort of a deal. And, we'll just have to watch it unfold and continue to cover it, I suppose, because there's not really a lot that we can do. No matter how much we say here on the channel, that sounds like it makes sense. Nobody listens really to this show, at least in the government. So we'll just have to sit here and just kind of be a spectator and just watch it all happen, whatever happens. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And a huge thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, because it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing running. And also, I got to say a huge thanks to everyone for having the patience to bear with us, because Matthew actually checked earlier in the stream, and it appears that YouTube's been having some pretty significant outages while we've been on air, and I've got to say that a huge thanks to everyone who has been patient enough to make it through that, and a huge thanks to everyone who's also made it around to supporting the channel as well, because that support's incredibly helpful and helps us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to OK State, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, OK State, as well, for that support. He said one of the largest ammo depots is here in McAllister, Oklahoma, and they store Patriot interceptors there. And I've hunted deer there. And they said that they awarded hunting spots by the lottery. Oh, wow. And also was super cool to hunt just yards away from a bunker. That seems insane to hunt near something like that. That seems sketchy, actually, to hear that. But I would assume that the people they're letting on the hunting land is probably qualified, since they're doing it by a lottery, I would assume. But Enforcer, what say you?
Here it is. The McAllister Ammunition Depot. Oh, dang. They have railway access. Yo, that is actually really cool. I didn't know that. I've never actually seen this ammo dump before. I've never looked at it. Wow. This is a railroading world of its own. You can make an entire model railway layout out of this thing. And this would just be the layout. That would be it. I mean, that's insane. Look at that. Railroad access to every ammunition bunker. That's the way it's done, folks. That's the way you do it. I mean, they've got the
How come I don't see Russia? How come I don't see Russia with something like this? Like I haven't seen anything like this in Russia.
because they broke. Ah.
Oh, they're broke. That's why.
Let's see. Let's measure the length and width of this thing, and then compare it to a growl arsenal. So this thing is, holy moly, 9 miles across from north to south, and let's see how wide is it this way? About, dang, it's a 9x9 cube of just raw ammunition. That is about 81.
How good are the bunkers though? Like how fortified are these bunkers? Because with it being in an area like that, it's like if an enemy wanted to target that, like from like sending in missiles from a ship or something, it seems like that would be a pretty localized target.
It'd be hard to call as damage. Here in the United States of America, Matthew, we have what's called ammunition storage procedures, which are incredibly complex. Every single ammunition storage bunker has to be at least 500 feet apart. Notice 500 feet apart. If you measure from north to south, also notice, check this out, also more than 500 feet apart. That means that if any explosion happens in one of these bunkers, one, the bunker is well insulated, so it's going to contain a lot of the explosive force inside of the bunker. Secondly, if any of it makes it out, the other bunkers are also protected, meaning that a chain reaction of explosions would be pretty hard to see. So for that reason, while it would look like it would be easy to completely send this thing sky high, it'd actually be pretty complicated. You basically have to hit every single one of these bunkers.
Oh, interesting. So like what can the bunkers withstand though? Like if one was hit directly, it's like how fortified are these bunkers? Is it like thick concrete or is it something else?
Oh yeah, it's thick concrete. You can actually see the top of the lids right there. It's I think something like several feet of dirt. I think it's something like more than 10 feet of dirt, and then several feet of concrete. Or like a couple of feet of concrete for each of them. And then then I think it's reinforced with some additional armor in a sense as well. So it would be pretty difficult to get to the ammo inside. And on top of that, the ammo isn't stored by like, the thousands of tons. It's just like a couple of hundred tons of ammo in each. So while it would be a really big explosion, the other bunkers are also well enough protected that they also wouldn't go up in a chain reaction, or it'd be really hard for them to do that.
Interesting. So does this mean we're rich?
Oh yeah, man, we're rolling in dough. Oh yeah, like
oh man, I tell you, it's nice to be a country with at least paper wealth. I'm not sure if we have like real wealth because I don't think the gold's in the depository anymore. But we have a lot of paper wealth, and with that paper wealth, we've done fantastic things with it. We've built some very nice submarines. We've ordered a lot more B-2 bombers, even though the production line's been dismantled a long time ago. Also, by the way, I think he's referring to B-21s. I think he misspoke, kind of like he misspoke about Iceland and Greenland. It's just things are tricky. Little things are difficult sometimes, but it's amazing what money can buy when you have a lot of paper wealth like that. It's amazing.
I mean, it really is something else, I have to say. Also, by the way, I'm trying to find a growl arsenal. Oh, here's one. The one at Karachev. Oh, yeah. So let me show y'all. This is what a Russian ammunition depot looks like. Y'all just saw the one in McAllister, which is the largest one in the country, but it's also very similar to all of the others that we have. This is the average mega arsenal for the Russians. So this is where all of their ammunition is held, is in a place like this right outside of Karachev. And if you look at it, I mean, the quality isn't here. Also, that's just ammunition laid out in the wide open.
you got to admire the Russians. Like they just don't give a damn. Like they'll put the ammunition right out in the open air where there's like literally nothing protecting it, and they'll sleep well at night knowing that.
Also, here's a whole bunch of loosely dropped ammo crates just in this concrete pad right here. Just hundreds of boxes of stuff just randomly and haphazardly thrown out. This is why, folks, in a war, America would win. Because while Russia's trying to sort through their ammo depots to figure out what's not been corroded from the cold and the rain and the heat and everything over the years, and also trying to figure out what ammunition is where and what actually works, we have all of our ammunition sorted and pre-designated in spots, air-conditioned, temperature-controlled, and insulated, and well-protected from any attack. That's the difference between Russia and us. That's the qualitative difference, folks, that nobody ever points out in the propaganda, is that Russia's got their stuff put up in a Hooverville shanty shack like you would see in Rio de Janeiro. We have ours put up in a Hilton, because we do it better than the Russians. There's no doubt about that. Here's ours, again, just to show y'all the organization, the cleanliness, the perfection. And then the Russians, you already saw, so I don't even have to go there again. I mean, look at this. The Department of the Army can literally roll up a railroad boxcar and with a forklift just load the ammunition right up into a boxcar. I mean, this is as efficient as it gets, no joke. Like, this is the highest level of efficiency because here's how it worked, folks. I got to tell you all the magic of it, all right? With it being directly connected to the railroads, all they have to do is send down a forklift, bring a truck down with a forklift, drop off the forklift, and they go in there and they just literally pick up the ammunition on their pallets and then just go ahead and roll them right up into a boxcar. Then a train comes through, spots all these boxcars, builds it into a train, and off it goes already to a port to load it onto a ship to then send overseas, or they're loading it onto an airplane like a C-17 or a C-5 and they're flying it over high priority. Either way, the ammunition is getting there as quickly as it possibly can. That is why American logistics is king. Really, Western logistics is built off of this model, so really Western logistics, not just American logistics, is king. That's why we win wars. But anyways, with that, a huge thanks to you for the support and sharing this with us. Really cool to hear that you actually hunted in here. That's really neat, honestly. And I hope that you get to go in there and hunt again because that looks like a really cool place. And I bet the wildlife is teeming in there. Wildlife loves ammunition. They have a fondness for the stuff. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. Also, what kind of rail yard? Oh, dang! Look at this, dude. They even have flat cars. What are they? Wait, hold up. If they have flat cars, they have vehicles. Oh my god. Dude, look at all the engines. This is the Department of the Army's engines, by the way.
Yeah, they have what's known as unlimited budget to a large degree. So if they want stuff, they say let's have some.
Let's see. Let me see if I can show y'all here some of the Army's locomotives. They're actually neat. They have their own little designations and everything. Here is a U.S. Army. It looks like a GP-15 or a GP-20. But here's one of them. And they have a whole fleet of these things around the country. It's actually a little unknown, but the Army actually has a railway unit. I forgot the name of the railway unit. I think it's about the size of a brigade or so, but they're responsible for railway maintenance and also running the locomotives and engines of the U.S. Army. They don't operate like nationally, like you won't see a U.S. Army train off of an Army base, but they do all of the little industrial spur line work in these ammo depots and such. They also have some of these down in Anniston in Alabama, but they do all the work inside of a railroad. Then they bring it to this little area right here, which is called an interchange, and then a bigwig railroad like BNSF, CSX, or UP or Norfolk Southern. They'll come by and they'll pick them up, and then they'll take them to wherever they're supposed to go, to a port or an airport or wherever. But really neat stuff, honestly. But let's see. If they have flat cars, though, they have vehicles, and I'm just dying to know what kind of vehicles do they have here. I don't see any. I don't see any popping out, at least. So, maybe, I don't know, maybe they just store them there and then transport them elsewhere. I don't know. But what is this? Huh. That's interesting. Those look like conveyor belts.
Yeah, I can't really tell what that is.
Man, I wonder what this is for. Like that's I gotta say, folks, I'm about to be getting deep into this off air. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Robert Betancourt, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Robert, for the second support of the night. We do appreciate that. He said, Abraham Lincoln is keeping landings to a minimum as the tires in landings are only good for 5 landings. And will this affect the strike until a tire supply ship comes around?
Oh, well, it may, but there might also be an auxiliary that's already met up with it while it's underway, and that might be why it was taking a while for it to get there. And also, I'm sure they have a reserve of tires on board as well. And I wouldn't really know the condition of how depleted that is already or not. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so I hope that does address your question the best we possibly can. And a massive thanks to you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from Yo-Yo the Great. And thank you very much, Yo-Yo, for that 20. They said, I suggest talking to your chaplain. Seriously, they can help if you're concerned about illegal orders. And is that because they are like sworn to keep things private, I guess? I would assume there's probably something with that.
I would assume that there probably is, and I thank you for sharing some information there. I won't get into the matters of domestic politics on that, but very interesting thing to discuss as far as a moral question. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from Gerald Everett. And thank you very much, Gerald, for that 20. He said, in World War II, the U.S. used over 7 million artillery shells in Okinawa alone.
You know, that's actually an interesting fact. That's true. And another thing that's even crazier is that we used more ammunition in Vietnam than we did in World War II, I think like 5 times over. And let me go pull that up. Let's see. Munitions in Vietnam War versus World War II. Let me see if I can get you all the infographic comparison there. Let's see here. Let's see. I think this is the best one I'll be able to get. So here is the comparison between Vietnam and World War II. So remember, World War II is being fought by the U.S. over the North African campaign, the Italian campaign, the Northern European campaign, and the Pacific campaign, just to name the large ones. And over the course of the entirety of World War II, we used something along the lines of 3.4 million pounds of ordnance that were dropped on enemy forces. In Vietnam, we used about twice that number, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We dropped about 7 million pounds of ordnance onto enemy forces inside of Vietnam, which is twice the amount. In a war that lasted technically a good bit longer, it was about 20 years for U.S. involvement, but really more so about 9 or 7, if we're speaking honestly, because the first U.S. military action happened in 1965, and then it ended in 1972 with the Paris Accords. So not an incredibly long period of time. It was just a little bit longer than World War II. Yet we used twice the amount of munitions. It's really crazy, honestly, to think how many bombs are used in wars these days. Because really any war that we're involved in, even places like Iraq and Afghanistan, we're getting on up in terms of the tonnage of ordnance used. Very similar to what we would have used in the Second World War. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And a very interesting fact about the Battle of Okinawa. You know, nowadays, Okinawa is actually a really nice vacation spot. Did you know that, Matthew? Did you know that?
Yeah, I did know that, actually. People love to go to Okinawa.
Man, people love to go to Okinawa. I mean, look at this. They got tank traps on the beach. Like, it's almost like World War II still. I'm just kidding, by the way. It's very different than World War II. But I mean, look at the water. It's beautiful out there.
Oh, yeah. Now, you know, that there's just one problem with the place, though. It does have that tsunami threat, which is a bit of a problem. But, you know, rather than that, there's also that little earthquake threat. But, you know, other than those two things, it's pretty nice. Oh, wow, look at that.
I mean, it's just... I mean, just look at the place. I mean, you know what's you know what's also interesting, folks, is that Okinawa has technically been a part of Japan for hundreds of years. But even so, they still have their own independent culture. The people of Okinawa don't consider themselves to be Japanese. They consider themselves to be Okinawans, which are culturally distinct from the people on the Japanese mainland, which I find very fascinating because it's a contained ecosystem of its own culture. And so Japanese people, folks, they go to Okinawa on vacation like Americans go on vacation to, say, the beaches in Florida or something. Like it's a totally different place. It's really interesting to me. Let's drop down, actually, on the streets of... Matthew, let's pick one. Naha, Okinawa, where do we want to go? Do we want to be, like, close to Kadena, or do we want to be close to the U.S. Marine Corps base down here?
Bring me to Kadena.
Kadena. Oh, look at that. Man, this is a cool base. I hear that they have conflicts with the locals from time to time over the base and the perimeter. I can't bring you on the base, sadly. Oh, wait a minute, actually, I can. The commissary.
Commissary.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, let's go. What is it? Dude, this looks just like the United States, like with the parking lines and everything. Like, I'm not gonna lie,
It looks
man.
kind of depressing. Like it looks like they brought a little slice of American depression to Japan. Why'd they do this to them?
Man, I don't even know. Like, I don't even know. Let's drop down in Okinawa itself, central Okinawa, on the main street. I think this is Gate 2 Street here. Let's drop down on that and see what this looks like. Ooh.
Okay. It's a little bit rank.
Ooh.
Tattoo.
I think that place is shut down. I don't even think that's an Indian tailor. And then they got a dead Mickey here. Like, bro, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, Okinawa is not, at least on Gate 2 Street. You know, I'm not gonna lie, folks. U.S. bases have what I call the Fort Benning effect. Because when we,
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about. So,
oh man.
so I'm gonna explain this for everyone. In Alabama, there's a town. Well, it's not really in Alabama. It's kind of in Alabama, but there's this town called Columbus, Georgia, and it's right on the very outskirts of Fort Benning. All of this forested area here, this is Fort Benning out here. But Columbus, Georgia, kind of spreads over into Phoenix City in Alabama. And when you drive into this area, it looks like a legit beat down slum. And I remember I always was like, why is it like that? What's up with this? What is up with that? Like, there were, like, in Columbus, Georgia, you can find the following: tattoo parlors, strip clubs, bars, and a couple of other things. And and I always wondered as a kid, the few times I ever went there, I was like, why is it like this? And then when you go down to the Pensacola Naval Air Station, it's very similar. If you go to any military base and you get near the perimeter of it, even Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, like outside of Maxwell Air Force Base, it is basically a war zone outside of the base. I call it the Fort Benning effect. And I think it's just that, for some reason, the areas right outside of military bases just don't really look that grand. I'm just going to put it that way.
It's the noise. Like, people don't want to be, like, the same reason people don't want to be around airports is the same reason they don't want to be around military bases. It's the noise from the aircraft taking off. It's the all the noise that comes off the military base, the calls and things like that. They don't want to be around it. So naturally, property values start going down, and then the area starts looking like a slum after that. So wait a minute, hold on. Turn the camera around for a second. What was that vehicle on the road?
This one?
What the heck is this? Yeah, what is that? What is that? A Suzuki? I don't know what that is right there.
I don't know. Also, man, Miles Sadowski said, yeah, I'm in Columbus right now. Gigahood. I've never heard gigahood before. That is the first time I've ever heard that term used in my life. But, I mean, this is...
Also, that's where all the debauchery happens on the weekend. When you get your paycheck in the military, I've heard a rumor on the street is they go out and, have a good time in the town.
That's a hard,
they don't really
fact.
Care.
They
don't really care if it's a slum. As long as there's alcohol flowing, it may be or may not be a strip club, possibly. But as long as there's alcohol flowing and there's maybe a club or something, there will be debauchery on the weekend.
The jokes about the lower enlisted marrying the strippers on the weekend is not a joke in Columbus, Georgia. Like, I think that's kind of getting around to being, like, pretty accurate, if anything. But also, let's see here. Let's take a look. We got to take a look around the Marine Corps Air Station, Matthew. I wonder what this looks like. I'm very fascinated by that because one thing that I've always heard, folks, and this is even something that I've heard from the Marines that I know and are friends with that have been to Okinawa, but they pride themselves on saying that the Marines can really bring a place down. And I'm wondering, is that true here? Let's take a look. I mean, honestly, this is not as bad as near to the Kadena. I mean, like, just being honest, like, this isn't great, but this also isn't, like, terrible either. I mean, this is pretty decent, really, at least compared to Gate 2.
Apparently, nobody wants to be anywhere near this area, apparently, because the area doesn't look that great for Japan.
Trash on the streets! I'm not gonna lie, man. This place is downhill for Japan. This is what they call the hood. Like, I mean, I gotta tell you, like, I'm saying this, folks, because if you ever look at the Japanese mainland, it's very different looking. But let's take a look at another place here. Where in the world is the entrance to the Marine Air Station here? Because we can find that. We can find the Gate Street. This looks like it's it. So let's drop down on this main road and take a gander. Pepe? Huh.
Pasta, pizza, panino.
I think it's panini. Like, I think...
No, it's panino.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's panino. I mean, you say, I don't know what you're talking about. Panino is what I know.
I thought... hold up, let me pull this up.
What's he pulling up? Let me have some of that meatballs and gravy.
Panini, it's a sandwich.
Yeah, that's a sandwich, but they're talking about panino.
I gotta go take this off air. I don't know what this is, and I don't want like I don't want to pull that up. So that's just another way of spelling panini. So either way is correct. You can
See,
use
I told
either.
you. I told you the whole time. What are you? Hey, Vito, what you doing over there, Vito?
Give me some of that macaroni and gravy. Like, man. Yeah.
How much more betrayal can I take?
Listen here. You gotta get some of that gabagoo. Let's see here. Let's drop down to Naha. Let's see what Naha's looking like. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really think Okinawa's got it going on, at least from where we're dropping down. I don't know about it. Let's go look at the mainland in Japan, just so that way I can show you all why I was like, oh, let's go to Osaka. Let's just drop down in any random street here in the center area of the city, like we were doing down there. So, see, this is what I was thinking it was going to look like.
Yes, I like the way this looks. This looks much, much better, I must say. You know, this is where, in Osaka, this is where they have those really high-end Japanese bars where the bartenders are like artistes. They get the ice and they're able to like chop it up with a little like fine, like sharp knife and stuff like that and make it spin and all that stuff like that. And probably put outrageous prices on it, I would imagine. When you see such art form like that, you know the price is probably real artsy too. It's probably like $500 for like one drink or something, but it does look cool though. I will say I do admire their artistry.
I would have to agree. And also, folks, this is like I had like for an American city that would kind of just look like a middling part of a normal American city in Okinawa in most places, but I have very high standards for Japan because Japan usually has high standards for itself. And so I'd have to be honest with y'all, I think the Japanese probably, if I remember correctly, I think they actually do kind of look down on the Okinawans in general, and I think I kind of get the idea why, because it's kind of a rougher place down there. Let me see if I can show y'all another one. I'm not going to go to Tokyo. I know everyone's like, go to Tokyo, but Tokyo is Tokyo. You know, everyone goes to Tokyo and looks at it. I'm trying to see what the more average places will look like that isn't really the pride of their country. Let's go to Sendai up here. And let's take a look in the central area of the city here. Get a little bit of an idea what this looks like, just to get some comparisons. See, this is like way better than Okinawa, like a lot.
This is real nice. When you said Sendai, like for some reason, like it brought me back to that Twilight Zone episode where George Takei was jumping around talking about Banzai. It's like jumping around that episode doing that. I don't know why, but it brought me back to that for a second. That wasn't where he was with William Shatner. That wasn't until Star Trek, was it? Like he wasn't with William Shatner until that show, right?
Yeah, I don't think he was actually. I think that was the one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That was before George Takei got, what in that fight or that whole brawl with William Shatner on that whole thing. I don't think they were friendly.
No, no. Also, someone said no trash, no homeless camps. There are some. There are some in Japan. There's homeless people here.
They hide them in the back.
Yeah, don't kid yourself. They keep them in the back. You have to go up to the local government and say, "I want that good stuff." and then they go, "Oh, we do not have that here. I want that stuff you got in the back," and then they'll bring them out for you. I can pull this up really quickly because I think that a lot of people. Let's see here, homeless camp in Japan. Let me show this really quickly. There are homeless camps in Japan. Like, don't be mistaken. Like people always have like this rose-tinted glasses that they look through the world in, and where the U.S. has a whole bunch of problems, but no one else does. There are homeless camps in Japan. I mean, there's homeless camps everywhere in every country for the most part, unless if they're doing something really effy. Because the countries that don't have homeless camps, they basically take the people who become homeless and they either execute them or they put them in prison somewhere or out of sight. And that's why it looks like they don't have any homeless. But every country has homeless people. They're there. There's homeless people in Seoul and South Korea. There's homeless people in Taiwan and Taipei and elsewhere. They're everywhere.
You know, they really don't have a gang problem anymore. Like really, there's still gangs in Japan, but they've largely, for the most part, shrunk and like minimized their gang problem down to nothing. The Yakuza was a big one. That was a whole like collection of organized crime groups that were in Japan. They've got like record low numbers on that. I think there's barely I think it's like 18,000 or something across the whole country, which is down from like 200,000, like just about, I think, a few years back. So, I mean, they barely have a like gang problem anymore. I think crime's pretty low in Japan for the most part.
Yeah, they really started to crack down on that after they had the economic miracles of the 60s and the 70s, and they started to have a lot more economic success. They started to crack down on that a lot more because it was really the destitute economic situation that came out of post-war Japan that led to the Yakuza exploding throughout most of the country. And then they started to cramp down on it a lot like we did on the mafia and the other gangs in America from about, well, not really the gangs, but the mafia specifically. We started to crack it down on them heavily, starting in the 70s and moving on up into the 90s. So very similar in Japan with how they did that, because a lot like the Yakuza, the mafia in America is still around, but they're not as prominent as they are. They're not as strong, and they're not really as significant as they used to be. If you go to a big city though, like Chicago, New York, they are going to be there, but they're a lot more low key, and they don't really have as many members as they used to, and generally they kind of crack a lot easier too.
Yeah. Also, by the way, just like a fun fact here, I'm sure there's always somebody in the chat that knows, because there's always somebody who's like an expert in everything in the chat. But do you know like what the most like popular game is inside Japan?
Oh, let me think here. It's probably going to be something
There's one
Nintendo.
really There's one really popular game that's something that it lines the streets in the major cities in Japan. Like everybody plays it. It's technically not gambling, kind of gambling a little bit. Do you know what it is?
I don't know what it is actually. What is it?
It's pachinko. It's a game that they have in Japan. It's one of the most popular things in the entire country. It's technically not gambling. Rick said it. He said it right there. He got it. He was the first one in the chat to get it. It's technically not gambling, but you can trade in like points or something like that. I'm not really sure exactly how it works, but you can trade in points and you can somehow find a way to get money out of it, which technically you're not supposed to because that's gambling and it's actually illegal. But you know, there's like loopholes and workarounds and stuff with it. So that's a very popular game. Like I think it's like pinball or something is what it kind of looks like. But it's sort of interesting though. It's very popular.
That's really interesting. I actually didn't know that. You know what the modern traditional Christmas dinner in Japan is?
The modern traditional, that's duck.
No, that's KFC.
Are you sure it's not duck?
If you Google it, man, like Google KFC Japan Christmas. Like just type that in, it'll tell you all about it. Back in the 70s, the vice president of KFC Japan lied to everyone in Japan and said, "Oh, in America they eat KFC for Christmas dinner." So in Japan, they don't really celebrate Christmas much at all, but it is traditional for a lot of people to go just basically pour into the KFCs and get like a $5 fill-up bucket or something like that, because that guy basically fooled everyone into thinking that it was a Christmas meal. And he said, the modern day man, he said, honestly, I feel bad for lying to him, but I mean, it did pretty good for the company, so oh well.
Yeah, it's a Kentucky Fried Chicken meal and strawberry shortcake. That sounds horrid. Like to have both of those together. That sounds
Yeah.
that sounds kind of rough. Sounds like a recipe for a bad Christmas night. Is what it sounds like. That's interesting. There, they said apparently that's wild. Apparently they fooled the whole country from the sounds of it, because everybody goes into this.
Yeah,
The Christmas cake though sounds pretty solid. That light sponge cake with the whipped cream and strawberries, resembling a festive shortcake. Kurisamasu keka. I think it said. I'm probably saying that wrong, but it looks pretty tasty.
And y'all also want to know something even crazier? What do y'all think Japan's national sport is?
Japan's national sport. Let's see here. Hold on, don't say it yet.
Oh, you're Googling it.
on,
I
the
can hear you
national sport-
typing, dude. I can hear you typing. Don't Google it.
Sumo wrestling.
It's baseball.
It can't be, because I just pulled up and it says sumo wrestling.
Let me pull this up. Let's see.
Man, you got it wrong. I'm the one. I literally pulled this thing up.
Hold up. Let's see. Hold up. Let me pull this up.
So sumo is considered the national sport.
Let's see. Oh, hold up, dude. You're reading the AI overview, and then it says right after that, other sports like baseball and soccer are way more popular. It's like I'm saying, like, as far as like the most popular sport in the country, because in America, basically our official sport's baseball. But are you going to see anyone going to an NBL game? No, they're going to be going to an NFL game with the
MLB.
football team. Whatever, man. You get the point.
Yeah,
That
I'm talking about
macaroni and
MBL.
gravy. Like,
MBL.
that macaroni and gravy. It's baseball. Like sumo is like their national sport. Baseball is technically America's national sport, but you will watch a lot of people watching American football here in America than you do baseball. It's very similar to that. In Japan, baseball is their most popular sport.
Well, you know, out of all the different martial arts that they practice in Japan, Japan's also very big into martial arts, as everybody knows. They also teach Aikido, but they don't teach the type that the clown that went to Russia apparently practices, that Bushido. They don't generally teach that one. That's a unique one that only can be taught from Russia, actually. So they took that prize and they ran with it.
Man, honestly, you know, Japan and South Korea are very interesting countries because they have this really interesting fusion of their traditional culture and then a good amount of American influence. And you know what's funny, folks, is that Japan actually loved baseball before the American occupation after World War II. Like, they loved it a lot back in like the 1910s and the 1900s, like way back at the beginning of the last century. And it was so ingrained in their culture that in the Second World War, there was this harebrained idea, and if you don't believe me, Matthew, you can pull it up, that Babe Ruth was going to record an audio recording that could be blasted on loudspeaker to Japanese positions on the islands that we were fighting on, where he would tell them in Japanese, "Hey, look, buddy, I'm real disappointed in you. I can't believe that you wouldn't play ball real fair and square. Now, you ought to just give up." Like, they were actually planning on having them do that, and then they scratched it because they're like, they might be too fanatical, and then they just gave up on it. But they were actually going to have Babe Ruth audio record a message asking the Japanese to surrender because they were big enough into baseball already, they knew who he was.
That is interesting. I have not heard of that personally. One last thing before we move on, though. Yeah, there's one last question here. There is one guy in Asia. Some people know him, some people don't, but maybe you'll know. There's one guy in Asia who's considered the jack of all trades. And do you know who that is? There's one guy that is technically holds the world record for being good in pretty much everything. So who is it?
I don't know. Who is it?
You don't have any clue? Like, seriously, you don't have a clue? I'm surprised you don't know this.
No, actually, I don't.
It's the great marshal, Kim Jong-un. He's technically the only expert. He's technically the only expert in pretty much every industry, every hobby, and every type of expertise that there is. That's actually a fact, by the way. He technically professes to be an expert in everything. So he's the only person that actually in the world professes to be an expert in everything. So you can call him, I guess you could say, the jackass of all trades. He's not good at technically anything, but he's not bad at anything either. So I guess there's some truth to it, possibly.
So you're telling me that he's the expert at everything? That's not going to fly. Like, that is not going to fly. But anyway, so that we are on and into the next one.
And our next super chat goes to none other than Chef Danny B, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Chef Danny, for that massive support right there. And we do appreciate that. And Chef said, "Good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here. And sorry I've been a little bit down the last couple of weeks, but got some big things in the works right now. And I really can't wait to share with y'all and the LSA and LLT LSA."
Hey, that's really good to hear, Chef Danny B. It's good to hear that you got some things in the mill working its way on down. And it's also all right to be down from time to time. We also are down sometimes as well. We try and not show it as much on air, but sometimes the news gets us down a little bit when it's definitely not good. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Chef Danny B, we wouldn't be able to be here right now getting to run this show and getting to share the news with all of y'all, including you. So huge thanks to you so much once again for enjoying the show and supporting it tonight so that way we can keep this thing rolling. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, someone said also Kim Jong-un's an expert in eating well, too. He really is an expert in eating well. Like, he eats very well. We don't get to see what he eats because he does that very secretly. But I'm sure that behind closed doors, it's probably an ugly sight. But moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in a $30 support. And thank you very much, Marion, as well, for that generous support.
Hey!
And Marion said, "Good evening to you." And Texas is getting ready for some cold weather. Ice rain here in Texas. And it's going to be hell on the roads. Slava Ukraine and Hiram Slava.
And we've been hearing about that. And what's actually crazy, folks, is that this year is the lowest year, ironically, of snowfall in the Salt Lake area in recorded history, like by a massive margin. I think that down here in the Salt Lake area, there's only been like 3 inches of snow over the whole of this winter season. And in other years prior, there, at the minimum, there was at least 13 inches of snowfall in the Salt Lake Valley area during that period of time. So this is literally the record breaker. Like, nothing has ever gotten close to how little snow we've gotten. And right after we move out of the south, we hear that there's apparently going to be an inch or two thick of ice over everything from northern Alabama all the way up to Kentucky, basically in a line across the southeast. It's really crazy that that's happening. And I was telling Matthew, I was like, dang, I gotta tell you, I was like, that's kind of crazy. The way the weather, the climates are kind of changing around here. Very crazy stuff, I'll tell you. But it is snowing though, folks.
I feel like we're that kid that always had that like dusty cloud like hanging over him off of Charlie Brown, like Pigpen. I feel like we're kind of like Pigpen. Like wherever we go, it seems like the dusty cloud is following us. Like we've scared the snow off from Salt Lake City. We've ruined their whole snow season by showing up, which is a damn shame because I was wanting to see some snow and we haven't gotten any at all. So that's a whole thing. Also, I've been hearing this. I saw Terry Olalila say this in the live chat. They said there's an exploding tree advisory in upper Midwest. And I had heard about that. Is that actually real? Like, apparently it's a real thing. The trees will explode or something. Well, I won't make that joke, but apparently the trees are exploding up there. So what's that all about, by the way? Jump and see what that's about.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Exploding trees. Oh, yeah, there is a real deal about that. Yeah. Let's see.
What's wrong with them?
A tree may explode when stresses in its trunk increase due to extreme cold, heat, or lightning, causing it to split suddenly. Let's see. Cold weather will cause some trees to shatter by freezing the sap because it contains water, which expands as it freezes, creating a sound like a gunshot. The sound is produced as the tree bark splits, with the wood contracting as the sap expands. Let's see.
Jeez. Sounded like Syria.
I gotta say, this is kind of crazy. I feel like I really do feel like this is Syria. Like, I feel like in a second you're probably about to start hearing these trees screaming a famous catchphrase. But this is bizarre. So apparently, yeah, they can explode. Well, I guess it's a good thing that we live in Utah because there's not really a lot of trees around here. So y'all better be looking out. Y'all thought the Ukraine war was a million miles away, but now y'all are gonna be seeing trees blowing up everywhere. So yeah, get ready for that one. So anyways,
well, I remember when I was real young and living in the woods of Alabama. Obviously, I was not alone. I was with my family, of course. But I remember I went out into the woods one time and I heard this loud cracking sound. It was like this loud, like bassy, cracky sound. And I was like, "What the hell was that?" And I looked down the way. And I saw it was a tree falling. I saw it was a tree that fell over and stuff like that. And then I realized, like 2 seconds later, apparently it was like a raccoon's house or something. Like apparently there was like raccoons living in the tree or something like that. So the raccoons went running off and like jumping and acting crazy and stuff like that. And the whole tree was hollow. Like the whole tree was hollow with that. So that tree technically exploded, I guess you could say.
That's really interesting. I gotta say that is quite interesting.
Random stories, you gotta appreciate them.
Yeah, you do have to appreciate them. They are something else. But also, by the way, folks, I went up here today into Little Cottonwood Canyon, and this is what it actually looked like today. It was really cool. It's really neat. But anyways, there's snow up here, but there's been literally no snow down there. There are people finally skiing up here, which is pretty crazy. Because a lot of people were complaining, there's no snow. What about my vacation? And then it finally snowed. Like, for example, this is what it started to look like around here. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support, a $22 support from Duncan VR. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. And we do appreciate that. All the way from Australia. He said, "Ba moo meow. Did someone say KFC? It's my birthday. KFC or pizza or both. And man, I get no respect around here. I get no respect. A wolf."
Oh, man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. Oh, man. Oh, man, the other day I went up into the mountains. They said it was covered in snow. I saw the hot dog man up there snorting it all off. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, I get no respect around here. Oh, man. You know, the other day I sat there and was told that nobody's above the law. And then I saw some guy. He went and conducted a whole bunch of illegal action. No one's gotten him. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man. It's really something else right there. Something else. Oh, man. And, oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man. There's a lot more that we can work with there. Oh, man. But still, a big thanks to you for support.
Is it really his birthday, though? I can't tell if he's joking about that or not. Is it really Duncan's birthday?
Oh, I mean, if it is, happy birthday to you. That was a bad voice crack.
Yeah, I was about to say we were skipping right over that, not knowing if it was true or not. I was like, is that part of the joke or is that serious? I don't know. Like Duncan, I need clarification on this.
We do need clarification on that. We certainly do. We have to give you a happy birthday wish if it's your birthday. But a huge thanks to you for the support. And I gotta say, oh man, I get no respect around here. And a huge
it really is. It really is.
Oh, hey,
Duncan's
happy
birthday
to you.
So happy birthday to you, Duncan. Sorry about that. I thought that was part of the joke. I didn't know that was like actually something you were being serious about. So happy birthday to you, and I hope you've had a good one.
And I gotta say, a happy birthday to you as well, Duncan VR. And I hope that you've had an incredible one. I thought that was actually just a setup for a punchline right there. I didn't know it was actually your birthday. And I gotta say, a big thanks to you for the support and a big happy birthday to you. Everybody give Duncan VR a happy birthday. He's got a happy birthday today, and he's hopefully had a good one. I hope. But a big thanks to you so much for the support. All the way down there from Australia, I say. It was a great country, Australia is, you know. Lots of flat land down there. A lot of deserty flat land down there. Like this one right here. Look at this. It's a salt flat, like we have out here in Utah. But a humongous thanks to you so much for giving support. And a big happy birthday to you. And I hope you've had some good KFC and some pizza, if you've been so inclined. And so a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And I also just saw George Tencher say, when Rodney and Sam Kinison were paired together, magic happened. Well, you know, I gotta say, I could really hear some people making a good skit right now, like Sam Kinison, about what's going on in Iran. They sit there and they say that they have no water. Gather around. You live in a desert. There's no water. But anyways, with that, I hope that has addressed that well. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Truckin' Chef, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Truckin' Chef, as well, for that support. He said the two best voices the enforcers make. You can't have my porcelain. How dare you? English voice, I think. The second, as we look into the wild, we see the elusive drone, Australian wildlife watcher, I think. Sample, maybe. I'll be honest with you, Truckin' Chef, I'm not familiar with either one of those right there. And maybe the enforcer knows which ones they are.
I gotta say, unfortunately, I don't know. I don't think that's in our voice repertoire. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And maybe we could give you something else, something that'd be close to that. Something that would require us to do voices. Matthew, hit him with an RFK.
You gotta remember, it's not something you can just turn on and off. It's something that you gotta think about. Listen, now it's really a crisis. You know, keep my name out of your mouth and don't say my name like that. No, I'm telling you, I'm gonna tell you twice. I'm gonna tell you once. But let me tell you about that venison that I cooked last week. You gotta have venison. It's not poison like that other stuff that they're trying to eat. It's that good venison. Oh, they call it deer.
Look, Jack, you gotta understand. Back in Scranton, there used to be this guy. His name was Poppin' Corn, and he used to pop a whole bunch of them. And he'd walk around, and he'd have a straight razor. He'd eat people. You know, it was what you did back then. You had to get by. You had to make ends meet. Anyway, look. People sit there and they judge. Listen. Sometimes you just got to eat someone. It's what. Look, what am I saying?
Stop whispering in my presence. It's not healthy for the auditory nerves and the ear canal. It's not good for that. You got to remember to make sure you take care of your ears.
Look, that guy's eating too much steak, too much elk meat, or whatever. Anyway. You gotta address that stuff, man. Look, man, you can't let that stuff get by you. You gotta be serious here. The brainworms and his stutter and the bear in Central Park. It's a big deal. You gotta.
I think I think the spirit of that guy is like sort of like getting revenge on me because I feel like recently because of not having a humidifier in here and the like dry weather, I feel like I'm naturally turning into his voice. Like I'm literally walking around and I feel like my like throat is not really wanting to cooperate. Like when I'm trying to speak, I'll have this like really like scratchy feel and I'll be like, dang, I feel like I'm about to start like wheezing in the middle of talking. So I think it's come full circle. I think I've got the bad karma has come back on me for imitating that guy's voice right there. I might actually adopt his whole tone actually.
Before long, when we get into politics, like Matthew, like, and also when I mean politics, I don't mean like, on the channel. I mean like running for political positions. Matthew will be out there going, the economy, it's got to be taken care of. You really got to make sure to balance the books. Like I'll be like, man, it got to him. But at least, man, on the bright side, if that ever does happen to you, you still don't have a worm in your brain. I mean, like, that's still a plus at the end of the day,
Yeah, I hope I never have that.
Man, I gotta say, folks, I just gotta say this. I just gotta be honest with y'all. If I had a dead worm in my brain, I would never stop paying attention to that. Like, no matter what. Like,
no, first of all, you'd never hear about it. I would never tell you about that if that was ever a thing. I would keep that and guard that secret very, very closely for the rest of my life. Nobody would ever know that the worm ever had an advantage over me. Nobody would ever know because I simply wouldn't say it in the public.
I'm not gonna lie. I think that is something you kind of just take to the grave with you. Like you don't really tell people there's a worm in your brain. Like that brings up a great deal of competency questions just by default. Like, you got a worm in your brain? How much of it did it eat? Like, like, what is it doing in there? Why is it in there?
And you'd have to do some work on me to get that type of information out of me. You'd have to do some work. I wouldn't be letting that one out freely.
I mean, like it's like okay, so the worm, like let's say here, we gotta understand this. So did the worm conduct like some form of a full frontal lobotomy, or did it just eat like a little piece on the side? And what did that affect? Like,
Well, the part that was disturbing is it died.
I mean, that really is something even more concerning.
It was in a nutrient rich environment, and it died.
I mean, like that thing entered the worm equivalent of a supermarket for free, like unlimited food for free, and it dies. Like I also have a question about that as well. How does it die, and why? Why did it die? And also, how much did it eat before it died, and why did it die after it ate the brain? There's many questions I have here. Many questions, and they're unanswered. That's why, folks, if you ever have a worm in your brain, don't tell anyone. Nobody's going to know unless if you tell them. Like, if you got worms in your brain, I mean, there's a lot of questions of how they got there, but don't tell people about that. Just keep it under wraps. Like back in the day, the Kennedys used to keep all kinds of stuff under wraps. Like they had one of their daughters lobotomized, and they just kept that quiet until like the 90s. Like, just keep stuff on the down low. Don't be telling people about it. But see, you're gonna be inviting questions, and then that's like easy low hanging fruit from that point on. The guy's got a worm in his brain. Like, that's probably like the easiest go to there. But anyways, with that, also someone else said I was hitting it up in college, and the worm said, "I can't take much more of this, boss." Like it rolled over. Oh man. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into the next one.
All right. And our next one goes to Atreyu, who puts in a 10. And they said, have you heard the theory that we mostly do U.S. strikes after our stock markets close, meaning the weekend? And generally, that is true, actually. That is actually kind of a true idea.
I'd have to say that is true. Generally, from what we've seen, they always conduct their actions on the weekends, so the stock market can't react. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support, and how about the channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $10 support from Eastern Sky, who said, I'm the doctor from a few episodes ago, a few streams ago. People were asking about my detention in Russia, and I created a YouTube video showing the lawsuits I filed against the Russian Migration MVD channel. And is that really true? Like, really? I'd be fascinated to hear about that.
Yeah, I'll be interested in hearing about that too. I got to thank you for the support and sharing that with us. And we're going to probably take a look at those videos once we get off air. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And I hope that is addressed the best we possibly can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Kyle Padell, who puts in a 10. He said, look at the size of Tinker AFB in Midwest City, Oklahoma.
Tinker Air Force Base? I don't really think we are tinkering around in the Air Force anymore now, buddy. But I'm just playing with you. Here it is. Tinker Air Force Base. Ooh, wow. A lot of AWACS. A load of them. That's like 1,000,000 of them down there. And, oh, another one. And another one. And, what's that? Oh, that's just some garbage. B-50, a scrap B-52 with no engines. Bro, that thing got boosted up on the cinder blocks on Tinker.
That is crazy.
Crazy, I tell you. Crazy. Oh, it's a chop shop. It's a legit chop shop out here. I didn't know that. I thought, oh, some B-1 Lancers, too. Look at that. Are these chop shopped? I don't think so. But very interesting, though. And I thank you so much for the support and letting us take a little bit of a look at Tinker Air Force Base, which is a chop shop. Let's take a look at the outside, though. Right out here at this strip mall. Is this a nice strip mall? Oh, wow, this is. Wow, this is really nice to be right outside of an Air Force base. But then again, the Air Force has higher standards, so I guess that makes sense. But anyways, a big thanks to you once again for support and sharing that with us. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Cruder Dragon. And thank you very much, Dragon, for that support. They said, exploding trees, you say. Did you know that eucalyptus explode like napalm thanks to its oil? California found that out. And also, by the way, in 2 days, it will be -3 as the low here in Kansas City. Ha and LOC.
I gotta say, I wish you well. I hope the energy infrastructure survives, because that starts to get rough. For places like that. But beyond that, yeah, so I actually did know that, because back when the wildfires in California were breaking out, that was a really big fact, that apparently a lot of what was causing that were the eucalyptus trees, and the fact that all of them had finally started to reach maturity, and the oil is highly flammable, and basically ignites, it spontaneously combusts, pretty much. Really interesting fact about that. That's why a lot of the wildfires back in the mid-2010s in California were going off like crazy. Some of them were human caused, but a decent amount of them were actually just caused from eucalyptus trees, basically, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about. The Australians really did them dirty 100 years ago. They said, "Hey, mate, have yourself a eucalyptus tree," and they didn't tell them that they catch on fire sometimes. But anyways, with that, a big thanks to you once again for support to help this channel to keep on running, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Putin's puppet, who puts in a 6. They said the U.S. is aligned with Putin, and maybe the U.S. is aligned with that leader in Syria and Iran.
Oh, I hope not. That'd be pretty bad for us. That'd be pretty bad in the long run. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Philip's Funhouse. And Philip puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Philip, for that support as well. He said, "Good evening, Enforcers. Let's talk nukes." He said, what is the difference between the blast radius and the range of the effects of the EMP wave and Slava LSA?
The difference is that the blast radius is direct physical damage. The EMP blast radius doesn't even have to have physical damage. You can just basically be anywhere that the radioactive isotopes hit that jams or messes up any sort of electromagnetic activities with any sort of electronics. So I hope that does address it the best I can, at least in the quickest explanation that I could give with my layman's knowledge of that. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $5 support from Garland Harris. And he said, "Thanks for what you guys do."
And thank you so much for the support and enjoying what we do. Folks like you make it possible, and we thank you greatly. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a 5. And Jack said, when Russians send their wounded on crutches assaults, do they call that recycling?
Yeah, technically they do, actually. Like in a non-ironic, non-kidding way, they actually call it recycling. But a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a $10 support from Dade Carnes. And thank you very much, Dade, for that support, by the way. There is no comment attached. Excuse me, by the way. But we do appreciate that. And Enforcer, what say you?
And we thank you massively for the support, because folks like you help this channel to keep running. And we're always greatly appreciative of that. And we thank you massively, once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Bethel Guiz, I think. And thank you very much for that support. They said, do you even think that Russia has functional nukes left? Or are they likely degraded like their ammo?
They probably do have some functional nuclear weapons left, but I would assume that most of them are probably inoperable due to a lack of maintenance, due to them just not having the money. And so I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Sambun, who said, I just subbed 6 days ago, and best decision of my life right now. Thank you for that, by the way. That's high praise right there. Glad you're enjoying being subscribed. He said, America needs guys like you right now. And do you think that NATO will help in Iran?
And I'd have to say, I thank you so much for the kind words. That's wildly kind words of you. And thank you so much for thinking highly of the show. I'm thinking highly of us as well. It's very kind of you. And I'd have to say that generally, not trying to sound like a narcissist here, but I do think the country needs people who think more like us on the governmental side of things or the civics side of things, because a lot of people don't really look at things squarely anymore. They look at them in a very weird sort of a authoritarian-like way. And I'm not saying that for the left or the right. I'm saying that for everyone. Everyone looks at something as a bit of an authoritarian sort of a extension, or that the government should become authoritarian. So I would say in that regard, I would hope that there would be more people like us eventually in America. But as far as your question, Matthew, what was his question again?
He said, do you think that NATO is going to help in Iran?
No, because NATO is a solely defensive force, and doing anything in Iran would require some form of an offensive action. So I would generally assume probably not. The U.S. will probably be the only one doing something to Iran. So big thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I was joking in the chat when I said I was 45 going on 46. I was kind of being a bit of a smart aleck to that guy right there because he was being kind of rude there in the chat. But no, I'm actually just 25. That's all. Just 25 years old. Someone said, there's no way that guy in that picture right there that I have as my profile picture, no way he's 45. And honestly, there is no way he's 45. He's actually 25. But anyways, jumping into our next one here. This one goes to Kyle Padell once again, who puts in a 5. He said, speaking of gambling, look at the WinStar World Casino in Oklahoma.
The WinStar World. Actually,
I hate casinos. I hate casinos. Like, I really do. Like, there's something that's so, like, greasy, like, feeling about casinos. I just don't like it.
Also, unfortunately, I don't even think we can pull that up because YouTube has some very strict regulations about anything that looks like it has to do with gambling. Like even like a little like ad banner on the bottom of your stream can get you banned off of YouTube. So I don't really think we can look at that. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope you understand the rules here. They're binding us. We can't really look at it because I'm not really sure how YouTube would take that. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And also, I just have to be honest with you all. I don't really like gambling. I feel like it's just a way to throw away money and kind of make it a little fun. And, you know, and if I'm going to throw away money, I'd like to have something to keep out of it, you know, instead of just like throwing it away and just getting nothing for it.
Yeah. You think they built that nice building off of winners? Absolutely not. It's like, it's a business, and businesses are in business to make money, make a profit. So they can't make a profit if you're paying everybody, you know, winnings. You can't do that. So, I mean, it's just, I mean, I get the fact that some people know that and they go in there anyway to like get a dopamine rush or something. But go in there knowing you're going to lose your money, because I mean, you are going to lose your money. Like, there's occasionally somebody that actually wins a little bit, but mainly that's for marketing. If we're being totally honest, that's not really to like out of kindness or something. So I just don't like casinos. Just not a good place.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And you know, also the other thing is it's like, you know, like if we're saying like gambling is basically blowing money away, like it's you never get it back. You're never going to get anything for it. If you're going to blow your money, why not blow it just buying something, you know? Like, if you spend $60,000 at a casino putting everything on black at the blackjack table, or the roulette table, you could easily go and buy a pretty decent car at that price. Well, I don't know, the modern economy these days, that might not be the case, but you could still go buy a car instead, and then you have a car. And sure, you're still down 60 grand, but you actually have a car instead of nothing, which is what you get at the casino for the most part. So you know,
they buy that too. They buy that too, and they also go gamble.
We're gonna hit it rich, baby! Yeah!
Yeah!
3 weeks later, they're joining everyone else down in the sewers in Las Vegas. They're becoming the sewer people.
Oh, man.
Aw, man. I gotta tell you all, I got no interest in going to Las Vegas, just being honest. I always look at Las Vegas. I'm like, dang, that place looks rough. Like it looks nice, but it's just a facade. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, in my opinion. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bruh, who puts in a 5. He said, what are the chances of Mexico aligning itself more with China, more, and what would be the impacting actions of that?
Chances are kind of decent because that's what Europe is pretty much already doing right now. So I wouldn't say it's out of the question. But generally,
They're already aligned with China, really.
I mean, if you think about it that way, I mean, you could say that. But I'd say it's a chance. It's definitely a chance, and it wouldn't really benefit America all too well. That's all I could say. Like, it would be a really complicated answer, but it just wouldn't bode the United States well at all. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, a big shout out to Truckin' Chef once again. He threw in a 10 this time, and thank you very much, Chef. Truckin' Chef. He said, look at the Lady of the Rockies in Butte, Montana. Butte,
Montana? Butte? Granite Mountain Mine. Let's see if we can find it. Let's see. Lady of the Rockies. We'll just type that in. Lady of the Rockies. Oh, it's a statue.
Oh, I know that lady.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, really? From where?
Isn't that one in Rio?
No, that's Christ the Redeemer.
Well, it looked kind of similar.
See, they flew
look at
this
that
one
in
in via
Erickson.
sky crane. Like, see, this one came in via sky crane, Matthew. You see? See? This one's built out of ceramic or something.
What exactly she do?
She just sits there. It looks over the mountain and all.
No, what did she do?
I don't know, Matthew. What do you think I am? An expert on history or something? I don't know. It's a big statue. That's all I know. I mean, it's
Well, nobody's gonna get you confused with the Great Marshal. That's for sure.
what does that mean? what the hell?
You're not an expert at everything.
Oh, yeah, I'm not an expert at everything. I mean, hell, that's our.
He got in the fields over that one. He thought that meant something totally different. What did you think that meant?
I didn't even know. But I mean, hell, Matthew, if you're looking for an expert at everything, that's the president of the United States. He says he's an expert at everything. Why don't you go ask him?
No, I'll pass.
I mean, hell, he said it today, folks. It was his words. If Abraham Lincoln and George Washington were resurrected, he'd just beat them to death in a landslide in an election. Because who the hell would ever vote for the first president of the United States and one of the greatest presidents in U.S. history, Abraham Lincoln, versus him? I mean, who the hell would? I mean,
Honest Abe. They called him Honest Abe. I mean, I think it had something to do with honesty.
I mean, who in the world could ever beat out such great quotes like "A house divided against itself cannot stand" and the Gettysburg Address and Washington's great and illustrious leadership with statements like "I've never seen a thin person drink Diet Dr. Coke"? I mean, who the hell could ever compete against that?
Or a house divided, I'll make it stand, according to the modern day the way things work. That's the quote today if it was in effect.
They're like, statements like George Washington's, like, "I am only a man and I am too, I'm not worthy of being in the position of the president of the United States, but I'll humbly accept the position if I need to," versus "I win everything. I won it like no other. No one's greater than me." Like, it's like, that's very hard to beat, Like, it really is. And I remember.
I never heard of Abraham Lincoln. Launching like Abe coin or something like that. I don't recall anything like that. I don't recall it.
Man, I gotta say, folks, I remember it was just a few years ago, people were complaining about how a certain political side was stomping on the founding fathers and their legacy, and now it's the other side too. It's like, wow, it's like, I guess we're just throwing our whole history down the drain at this point. It's like, hey, I guess that is what it is. We're not going to look back anymore at George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, who were major leaders of the Revolution that literally founded this country and created all of the ideals and values that we have here in our Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, and the Declaration of Independence. No, what are we kidding? We're gonna go look at that WWE match in the lawn or whatever, of the White House, because that is real American history and that's real American culture.
That's Americana. That's
Oh,
Americana.
classic Americana. We all know that. I mean, there's nothing that says Americana more, folks. Like sitting there and just shitting on the founders of the country. Nothing better than that.
Yeah.
I mean, taking a piss on them. You know what? We ought to go take a couple of sticks of dynamite and go do Mount Rushmore, and then go redo it with a couple of people from the modern day, because I'm sure that'll be more appropriate these days. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a find from Taoist Auditor, and thank you very much, Taoist Auditor, for that support. He said, in the early 2000s, a New Zealand chap was working on turning RC planes into cruise missiles. The government shut him down. Guess what's happening now?
I tell you, times are changing these days, I'll say. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to, also, by the way, just a quick comment. I know we're running late. Quick comment here. I went to the store today. Y'all might have noticed I actually wrote my first ever X article on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. I wrote my first one today, and it was about the prices of everything being so crazy and young people kind of being at a disadvantage because of that, and also the wages not really matching the cost of things these days that are skyrocketing through the roof. I was so pissed off. I actually went to the grocery store today, and I got very little items. I mean, very little, like only the basics. And I came out there paying $120 for just the basics. And I was like, you're kidding me. I literally took a picture of it in my trunk, like how much groceries it was. I was like shocked at how little it got, like for $120. And I came back, and I literally came back into my house. I did a bunch of research on what the cost of these same products would be in 2019 versus now. The same products I bought today would have been $65 in 2019 versus today, where it was $120 that I just bought at the grocery store. And that got me so pissed off, I literally started typing up an article about how bad things have gotten, like when it comes to prices for stuff. It is insane how bad it's gotten. And it's also insane how we're gaslit into thinking that somehow this is normal. This is not normal whatsoever. The grocery prices have increased by 35 to 40% over the last 6 years alone. That's not normal. The home prices over the last 7 years have increased 100%, doubled at least. This stuff's not normal, and the people aren't fixing it, and it really just pisses me off, especially after today, after seeing what little I got from the store and how much it was. It's insane to see that. But anyways, I know we're running late, so we're going to move on to our next one here, which goes to none other than Chef Danny B, who puts in a $10 support. He said, Chef Danny again, and if you haven't seen it, you got to check out the Spaceship House here in Colorado that hangs over a mountain, and it's been in movies and TV shows, and look up Spaceship House Colorado.
Spaceship House, Colorado. Let's take a look. Oh? Is this it? Is this the Spaceship House? Is it? Where is this? This is in Albuquerque. Let me go pull up the Spaceship House, Colorado. Let's see here. Oh, this one! Let me see if I can get a bigger picture of this. Let me see here. I have seen this one before. It's pretty cool, actually. And I guess.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is real nice. I mean, look at that. That is really cool. And the inside's really cool.
That's got to be at least 50 mil.
100 maybe. Like 100 million probably. But I gotta say, really neat to see it. And I got to thank you so much for the support and sharing that with us, because I do have to say, this is a really cool house right here. Really neat. I don't know if it's livable, but it certainly does look striking, that's for sure. And a humongous thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Once again, Chef Danny B, and letting us see an interesting house in the state of Colorado. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Andrew, for that support as well. He said, all levity aside, we're approaching World War III. Is there any way to avoid it? No, I think not. But perhaps you guys can give a solution. This is not a good position. The only solution is to prepare for it, and if it happens, we're ready for it, and if it does not happen, well, at least we were ready in case it did. That's the only thing we can do at this point. There's no way to avoid it. It doesn't matter what president of the United States is in charge. We are heading that direction. It's out of our control at this point. So all we can do is bunker down, get ready for it, and simply be ready. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to agree with Enforcer Man on that one. And so I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running, and I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Plazat, who puts in a 3. And thank you very much, Plazat, for that support as well. And we also have a 2 from Robert Planting. And they did not leave comments, but we appreciate you both very much for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And we also have a 2 from Bruce Lee, who said, "Oh, look at those European boilers," and quack in LSA.
Oh, I see you know your boilers well. Good one. And you, sir, are you ready to receive my limp boiler? But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Ryan H. on Wheels. He said, "Hello, enforcers. Check out the Royal Gorge War."
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting one right there. I think that was fought between the Union Pacific and the Denver and Rio Grande over control of the Canyon, the Canyon Gorge or the Royal Gorge. A couple of people got shot. Well, I don't think a lot of people died in that, but it was a battle between the two railroad companies, and it was settled in court that the Denver and Rio Grande would get the rights to this area, the Royal Gorge, down the Arkansas River. And so I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And it's a very interesting part of Western American railroading history. And with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Static, who said, if your audio is bad, send super chat.
And I thank you so much for the support. And I don't think that's necessary. I think it's largely sorted itself out. And it was a server issue, I believe. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Eastern Sky once again. And also, he mentioned that YouTube video once more. And we will check that out, by the way. We're running a little late tonight, but we will check it out off air, that is. But thank you very much for that support once again. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And it's now time to jump into our live chat questions. We are fresh out of Super Chats. So jumping straight into it, we have our Morse code decoders. We have Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Airblood Garbo, our Royal Fluffiness, Kush Cobra, Tarek Sai, and Brian Blairstown. And they said, Morse code. Oh yeah, let's go. It looks like they blew up a port and got that thing cooking up. LTLSA.
And that's the sound of money. Y'all got that down on the nail. That's Morse code mentioned tonight. I can congratulate y'all greatly for getting that correct. Y'all get that correct time and time again. Holy moly. And the Elite Spring Cinema Corps, they never miss a Morse code message. It's truly something profound and incredible. And so with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into the live chats. But unfortunately, due to time constraints, we'll only be able to get 3 live chats, and then we'll have to round this stream on out for the night. So we're on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Andrew Krigbaum, who said, "Hello there, Enforcer Matt. How many bases do we have in Greenland?"
I believe I know we have Pacific, but I wouldn't know the exact number. Let me go pull that up. U.S. bases in Greenland. Let's see. It looks like it's only Pacific. So that would be the answer. It would be Pacific Space Force Base, and that's really it, because that's really the only base that we really need in Greenland. The rest of them would be redundant, or they would be basically useless and a major drag on resources. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Bethel, who said, could it be the B-2 bombers has more range than the B-21 Raiders, and maybe that's why they're ordering those?
Yes, they do have a little bit more range and a little bit more payload capacity, but generally the doctrine is shifting more towards tactical bombers like the B-21s, more so than B-2s, which are basically a strategic bomber. And strategic bombers, while they have a use, they're not as versatile as a tactical bomber like the B-21 Raider, at least in modern air combat. So that's kind of the reason why we're not really moving towards the B-2. We're moving more towards the B-21, but maybe there's some sort of a greater reason in purchasing them that they might tell us later in the future. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be none other than, guess who? It's going to be none other than Phoenix Xavier, who said, what about North Korea, and how did their ammo dumps stack up to the ones we've seen in these other pictures?
I actually don't know. I haven't really looked at North Korean ammo dumps a whole lot. So unfortunately, I'd have to declare it.
Do they even have enough ammo to dump?
Oh yeah, they got a lot. Like, they've got loads. Let me see if I can pull up a North Korean ammo dump and find one here really quickly for us. Let's see here. Let's see. Sadly, I can't really find one. So, I did find one, but there's a picture of it on the Google. Where in the world is this? Oh, that's actually in Russia. Never mind. So, I don't really know where they store their ammunition because I really can't find any pictures showing us an ammunition depot in North Korea, and I actually don't know where they would be myself either. I haven't really looked into those. So, sadly, I'd have to declare ignorance on that, and I don't really think we can find a quick and easy answer to that either. But with that, we've reached the end of tonight's stream, folks. I got to thank you all so much once again for watching tonight. It's always an honor and a pleasure to get to run this stream for all of y'all, and we truly do greatly enjoy and find ourselves to be in high pride that we are able to see that almost 90,000 people came here tonight to watch the news, since many of y'all consider the Enforcer channel to be your primary source of news. We're always entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all do hold us in that high esteem, and if y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe as we cover this news at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single day of the week, except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and we always cover the past 24 hours of the news from around the world. And so we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world, and if there's a short war video to be made, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that short war video. And so with that, we will see you all then. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, long live the Leaf Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow on our next nightly War News stream at 10 p.m. Eastern, and also maybe on a midday short war video if there is enough news to cover. And of course, a huge shout out to all 90,000 plus people that have joined us by the end of the stream, and we appreciate every single one of you for choosing us as your news source. And of course, we will see you all tomorrow. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest, and good night.